Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's oh wait, hold on. What is this? It's not Warhammer. It's Rain in Hell Week. That's right. Because Adam and I, who's here, Uncle Adam, there he is. He's up in this corner. We launched a game, and Tyler helped. So the gang is all here. So don't worry, everyone. This is just a little 1 week deviation into our new game that we launched. We're all very excited about it. We're still going to talk about some news for AOS and all of that. And then back, we will return you to our regularly scheduled programming next week when we talk about Broken Realms Kragnos, which I'm really excited about for lots of reasons. So don't worry, lots of big things coming. As we've already had a couple of negative Nancys, I can see, who joined into this and were clearly angry that we would talk about any other game. I'll just say right up top, hit the like button. We really appreciate it, and you can show all the negative people that you think that's what you think. It's that easy. So anyways, joining us as always is my new interim co-host Tyler. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, bud. Happy to be here with you, gentlemen.
There was a lot of interest last week, Tyler, in your
Mm.
spectacular rainbow-hued color wheel clock, or whatever it is that's behind you.
Yeah.
And people wondered if I had maybe tricked you into starting to paint.
Afraid not. No, that has to do with the long view, long-term thinking, that sort of thing, as you know, is in my past. So,
Absolutely, I
yeah,
do. I do. Tyler
yeah.
should write a book about his life. I assure you it would be incredibly fascinating. He's lived an interesting life. Don't believe him. He's much more interesting than me. We're gonna do an Ask Me Anything just with Tyler sometime. It's crazy. Anyways, another person who's led a very interesting life, and I'm very happy to partner with him on this book. Uncle Adam, how you doing, brother?
Not too bad, not too bad. Yeah, no, it's been a ride. It's been it's been a heck of a not quite a week. But yeah,
Mm.
it's going well.
It has been a week. It's been a bit of a ride is the perfect way to say it. Yes, anytime you launch a game, it's going to be a thunderstorm, right? Because there's just a lot of. I am beyond thrilled. Thank you to everybody who's purchased the game or shared the game. To all the people who reviewed the game, who made bat reps and have just done a bunch of amazing stuff. We are over the moon and thrilled about everything and all the support and all of the just awesome interactions we've been having. I've been watching all the Facebook groups and everything, trying to, if any questions pop up or just interacting with people and looking at models and cabals people have been planning out. So a lot of fun. Soda Addict, is this the first time Adam's been on weekly? Oh no, gosh no. He's been on multiple times before. I think the last time you're on, we talked about Warcry, right? Was that the last time?
Yeah, I know we've talked about Warcry at least once, and I think we've also you and Tom had me on to talk about Kill Team one time too,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
and there might have been a time before that as well.
I think so. I think that's
Yeah, yeah.
right. Yeah. So we've no, Adam is we're almost an irregular at this point. We're ready to join up the league. We're doing our part.
Yes, exactly.
So at any rate, let's start off with the news. We still got some standard news, though. Fortunately, as though what can it be but the alignment of fate? It's a slow news week.
Indeed. Yeah, 100%. So that's my cue. Rumor engine. Pretty straightforward, seemingly.
40K thing.
Oh, I was gonna say some kind of mechanical Karajan Walker,
Oh,
Avatar of
you're taking the
Brunny.
big swing at KO Part 2 with the mechanical walkers.
Sure.
I think it looks like something from Privateer Press. Like it looks kind of like a Warjack foot almost. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it does.
It
Yeah.
looks like we're using some bad GW metal paint. Can see that pigment from space.
Hmm.
So pretty
Yeah.
pretty standard. Yeah, I think it's a 40K thing, but I would love it if it was like a mechanized suit for AOS. I am already
Right.
angry that Stormcast got a chariot. A chariot? Surely you jest. These thunder gods of lightning, and we're like, yeah, roll out with a chariot. No,
Yeah.
no, no. I refuse. Tanks. I wanted lightning powered tanks. And I'm upset about it.
Absolutely.
So, at any rate, yeah, I
Well,
say
especially after we saw that image this week that they rolled out with like that procession leaving a city.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, those airships and
Yeah, the
whatever the
big
heck that
crusade with
was.
all the KO airships and them hauling entire, fortresses, basically. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, yeah, it's got seemingly some markings that are very KO. I mean, the little boot there, little foot,
Mm-hmm.
that looks similar to some of what I've seen on KO, and then those like ether globes, whatever those are. You know, they've got those bluish. I don't know what they're called,
Yes,
but they're
except that
all
one's
over.
painted in metal paint, not blue.
Oh, that's fair. Okay. Well, yeah, that's something that I would be dumb on, so that makes sense.
Here to help, buddy.
uh, so yeah, we'll see.
Well, I hope you're right. I think you're wrong. There you go.
Fair enough.
What else we got?
Adam, you got any guesses?
Oh yeah, sure.
Definitely, it's cow elves.
There you go. It's
Yeah.
just there.
Boom.
We've strapped him into mechanical suits. Just really take it to the next level. I'm excited about it.
Mm. All right, so that's that. We got a little article today on the best rule set ever. Subtlety aside.
Yes.
Love
As we
it.
joked during the reaction show, I would love for them to say anything else, right? Like, we came out with a whole new rule set. It's okay. I mean, it's above average. Solid
Yeah.
6.5.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, the core rules have been rewritten from scratch to create the most concise and elegantly explained rule set ever. And to be fair, it was, I mean, we were all very excited, I think understandably in many ways, to see that they have started numbering all these rules, especially the lawyers among us. So that was cool to see.
Yeah, I didn't care about the numbers as much. I did care more about the fact that they put in designer commentary text. So
Yeah.
they're using what I'll colloquially call the Rain and Hell format of a large single main block of text within designer's commentary and the sidebar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once when a game comes out that really sets the standard, what can you do except I'm not surprised CGW following suit. No, I mean it is a good format, right? I mean, there's a reason we did it in the game like that, and I think that's how games should be written. Honestly, if you look at something like Soulbound, they did a lot of the same thing in some of their, especially in their more rules heavy chapters, right?
Yeah.
Because it's nice to be able to like go, here's the rule, here's either the critical thing you need to know about it, or a reference to another page where you're going to now follow up on it, or here's why we designed it like that. Like, there's lots of different forms those sidebars can take, but I've been a huge proponent of those for years because I think that they help alleviate problems. Now, already, that's if you write them correctly.
Sure.
Okay?
I mean, there's that. Sure.
Sure. Now, in the one that just came out today, they explain shooting. Okay, so it's like blah blah blah, shooting this, blah blah blah. Brandon S says, "Hey, and Uncle Adam, I typed up some rules questions from the Reddit. Yeah, we'll definitely have a question section. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So yes, I'll be happy to answer those later. At any rate, so they said, okay, if you're within 3 inches of an enemy unit, you can only shoot the unit you're engaged with. So standard AOS rules like we play right now, right? Standard 2.0 rules.
Yep.
And in the sidebar, it said you can shoot at a unit that is within 3 inches of an enemy without penalty, right? Meaning
that's
that, like,
within 3 inches of another friendly unit.
Correct.
A
yes,
unit,
exactly. So
a
in other
unit
words,
can shoot.
yeah, I'm the shooters. I'm the shooters.
Yep.
He's a shooter. You two are the enemies fighting each other within 3 inches of each other, right? You're friendly.
Right.
Adam's the enemy. Whatever, right? You guys are fighting. I can still shoot at Adam without any penalty. Is what there's no additional rules or restriction, right? So then immediately everybody read that as, wait, does that mean lookout sir doesn't apply and I don't take other negatives into account? I'm like, no, this is non-rules text. They're trying to say, no, there's not like a swarm of melee or something that would cause a negative to hit because you have to aim carefully to not hit your friends like happens in some other games or whatever, right? Like, no. Immediately already I was like, we're already reading it wrong. Just cannot help ourselves as a community. Can't help ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. So
So
they gave a little bit of information in the video. It was a little interview with Ben Johnson, the lead product developer for AOS, as most of us know. So Ben gave the little tagline, heroes will more heroic, monsters more monstrous, and new ways to build your army. So we've heard a little bit about all three of those. We kind of reinforce what we heard on Saturday, that heroes and monsters will have new special abilities,
Yep.
and that they're also going to expand on those in the new battle tomes. So that'll be cool to see. And then he mentioned the core battalions, that there's going to be multiple ones. Didn't really elaborate on what that meant, but I think a lot of us are guessing that it's something akin to 40K detachments, where they've got sort of variations, more elite one or more artillery vehicle oriented, things like that. And then he referenced a battle pack in the core book called Contest of Generals that he said is designed for pickup games and like little club events. And then, of course, New General's Handbook will be on the way with, didn't really give any details on that, just said a new format, new ways to play. So,
Sure.
yeah, but it's interesting to see if we get like a lot of new battle plans this time around.
I mean, I assume we're launching with just like we did last time with like 6 core battle plans, and that'll be the basic, the very basic battle plans to get playing, and then they'll roll out the generals, and that'll be like the tournament battle pack, or whatever. That's fine, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think they'll do the same thing that they're doing with 40K now, where they've got those kind of spiral bound sort of little books that are a bunch of different like mission packs and all that kind of stuff?
I don't know. I think that because probably not, just because they already have one, we don't require as much sort of nonsense in AOS, right? And two, I think that they already have a good delivery method for AOS, which is just like the standard General's Handbook that comes out every year, and it's kind of what we've all been trained to accept as where the tournament type packs and mission stuff comes from. And in general, the team has killed it. Like the one thing it's not that we don't have our critiques of Games Workshop in the past, but I will say for the last several years, the General's Handbook has been killing it on scenarios. It's really been strength to strength to strength.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's like one or two that were like, oh, maybe that's not the best one for tournaments. But out of the 18 or so scenarios, to have 16 that are viable for basically any tournament when you run 5 games in a tournament, that's a pretty good world to live in. So
yeah, it's a bit of a shame. Yeah, 2020, I thought we probably both thought was the best.
Yeah, it was such a great pack, and basically never played it. So, well, I mean, I played it tons, but we didn't ever play it in a tournament. Yes.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, that was cool to see today. That little article.
Yup.
And then we've got the Immortal Crabs Warband on the way, also known as Elathane's Soul Raid, apparently.
Nobody cares what the actual name of it is. It's Crab. Adam, are you excited about Crab releasing? Are you excited about the coming of our new shared god, Crabnos, and his fish friend?
I don't know why they wouldn't just go like, oops, all crabs. You know what I mean? Just like make a box that's just, I don't know, like what are those ones that they do at Christmas? Like in
Battle Box Crabs.
Battle Force.
Yeah, absolutely. Battle Force crabs, just nothing but crabs.
It would be like a unit of fish. I like the fish too. I think the fish gets underrated here. Everybody loves the crab. Sure. I thought the fish was really cute as well. What's up with that? The poor fish doesn't get enough attention.
I don't know. The fish can do a lot of fighting.
I mean, Magikarp just sits there, doesn't he? Isn't that his whole thing or whatever?
Just flops around a lot. Yeah.
I don't know Pokemon, but
you know that one.
But I do know that one, yes. And I mean, I know the whatever. We don't care. Anyways. I know like 7 Pokemon. If you were in Super Smash Brothers, I know who you are. There we go.
There you go. Sure.
Okay. So the point being is though, like, yeah, just all crabs, 1 unit of fish, call it a day. There we go.
Yeah.
Done and done.
Make it so.
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody's getting excited about that. And then I had a little update for Rain. Do you mind if I jump in with the Rain update? Since this is the Rain and Hell show, wanted to give the quick update on what's going on with Rain and Hell right now. So obviously the game is out. We're going to talk about it today. The new PDF, because when we launched, there was a couple errors in the PDF that we became aware of afterward. Unfortunate. There was only 2 things that were really, I would call, material rules situations. One was there was 2 values on a table switched, and one was there were some stats missing from the Beast scenario. Those have all been corrected. We did do some other cleanup as well, spelling, grammatical stuff, just other little cleanups here and there where we saw the opportunity. Since we were needing to upload a new version, we thought, why not give it a good pass over, clean it all up. That's been uploaded. You can get the new PDF now. If you've already purchased it, you can just re-download the PDF from your account. That's one of the great advantages of Wargame Vault and why we went through them. So super awesome there. The new book is in the approval process, so that everybody understands. Between Wargame Vault and then Lightning Source, which is who actually prints the books. There's a approval process that we have to go through when we send them a file. Even though we know it's basically the same, they still have to go through and we have to approve it and have one shipped out and all of this because they don't want to print something that's bad and then run a lot of copies of it and then have everybody return it to them and go, oh, you screwed up. This is page 7 is upside down. And it's like, wait, what? So at any rate, the book isn't currently available for purchase on the website. Don't worry. It will be back very shortly. There's a big note. You will not. We are expediting it with all possible due haste. And we will shout it from the rooftops, post about it on socials when it's available, which we hope is not too long. We've been tracking it slowly. It's like I'm like waiting for it's like when you order Uber Eats and I'm just watching for that car to drive around. One quick thing I will ask here. If you have already purchased it, first of all, thank you. We really do appreciate it. I just want to say that.
Absolutely.
Secondly, in the description below already, there is a link to the actual page of Rain in Hell. If you can go there, give it a rating. If you've got a minute, give it a review if you've enjoyed it, or if you think it's cool. We really appreciate that. It helps that rating and that review really helps other people find the title. People, read that stuff. The ratings help us stay in the searches and things like that on there. So it only takes like a minute. The link's down there. Even if you just click it and go, yep, I like this number of stars, fine. I'm not going to tell you what to leave. I want you to, give us the fair shake, whatever it is. I certainly hope you're enjoying it. You all have been awesome. So if you have just a second, hit that rating review. It helps us a great deal. So Thank you very much. Cool. Razor Tree said, will these fixes show up in the physical copy since it's made to order? So yes, that's what we're waiting on for approval. Now, if you already ordered it and it's already been printed, then you'll have the previous version and that there's nothing we can do about that. However, the only page that had the material error, which was the missing stats on the Beast scenario, we put up on the Rain in Hell website as a single page PDF. You can just go there, print it out, boom. That's your scenario for that. Easy peasy fix. No drama. Okay, so there you go, Razor Tree. Adam, anything else you want to say about that? Did I hit everything there?
No, I'm just keeping an eye on the website because, like you said, it has to be like approved by Wargame Vault, and then it has to be approved by the printer, and then we have to order one and then ship it as fast as possible, and that's a cost, obviously, and everything like that, just so that we can get it, look at it, go, yep, cool, and then click a button, and then it will go live again. So in the past, it took probably, with the slightly slower shipping, which was like 2-day shipping instead of overnight, it was still maybe a little bit less than a week, maybe. So hopefully we'll see something real soon, because we did this last night. We had kind of been told by Wargame Vault that they were like, well, probably when you submit the new one, the old one won't go away. But they were, that it's not that it went away. It just was like, oh, well, there's a change, so we got to. So it's a thing. It's a learning experience. This is our first game. So
this is our first game. Yeah. So
first game together in this situation. Let's say it that way. Yeah.
Yes. So there we go. So that's your updates there on what's going on there. Obviously, if you have any questions, there's an email and stuff like that. You can reach out to us, or you can hit me up on any socials, whatever, anything like that. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody's got. James, that's exactly right. I hope that he said, I ordered mine day one. It just means I have the special first edition with a printing error. That's exactly right. I hope in time this comes to be thought of like the original
Action Comics.
No, not that big. I was gonna say what is it, like Legends and Lore, whatnot? That's not what it is. The D&D book that had like Elric, Melnibone, and what was it?
Fiend Folio?
Was it the original Fiend Folio? I don't know. Whichever
Deities
one.
and Demigods.
That's what I think it was. There you go. Yes, because it had like Elric, Melnibone in it and a bunch of other stuff that they didn't own.
Oh, yeah.
And then immediately the owners of that copyright were like, whoa, guys. No, you got to get this out of here.
Cthulhu in it as well and stuff like that?
Cthulhu in it as well, yeah. Because at that time, I'm pretty sure, like, Cthulhu is ironically, no longer in... He's open now. He's not copyrighted anymore. You can just tell stories about Cthulhu now. You don't have to pay anybody for that anymore, as far as I know.
But in the 70s, 80s.
81, whenever that book came out. Yeah, you did. Yeah. There you go. Yep, Michael Newbank's Deities and Demigods. That's right. Thank you. There was too many, like, X and Y in early D&D, and they were all swirling in my head.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, did we have anything else, Tyler? Was there any other?
AOS events.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Tyler. I almost blew past your thing, but I'm not going to. So,
Mm-hmm.
Tyler has requested that as part of our news, we do occasional check-ins, and Tyler is going to put this beautiful slide together, so you can rest assured that this will all probably go away once Tom comes back and does nothing. But if Tyler keeps sending me these, I'll keep talking about them. So Tyler, this is the what we've got up on the screen right now is the list of upcoming events from June and July.
Yep.
You can find all this information at aosevents.org, which is done by AOS Shorts. Tyler, you want to talk real quick about this?
No, that's great. Yeah, yeah. I just thought this would be a nice little thing to do. Yeah, Dan Street at AOS Shorts been putting a lot of work into this on an ongoing basis, and yeah, it's the best resource in the community for just seeing the events happening around the world every month. So yeah, we got Bug Eater this weekend, and then yeah, Atlantic City Open with Marty running that next weekend. World Rampage, Sydney Slaughter, big weekend next week. So yeah, I try to get this to where maybe we can do June, 3 months out, but sure we could fit that all in one slide. Anyhow, just thought this might be nice. And yeah, aosevents.org is the place to go to for all of it.
And that'll be linked down below. Tyler did great work here. Thank you to Dan, obviously, from AOS Shorts for putting this all together. I love seeing all this action in Australia. I do think that the Rural Rampage, them Bendigo boys, they're all crazy out there. They're out in the bush. It's gonna be pretty amazing. So there you go. Okay, awesome, very good. Well, with that, then, gentlemen, let's turn to some pick o the week. Tyler, what would you like to share with everybody? You've got multiple things.
Of course. Apparently, Adam's going to follow suit, so appreciate that. So we got a lot of great battle report channels out there. Just wanted to. That's about the only thing I've been able to watch this week as far as content. Caught a few things. Of course, Rob with the Super Series, the T Sports Network. They did the Super Series Genesis over the weekend. Watched a little bit of that. Some of that's gone quite well. We've got a really cool little bat rep coming up tomorrow. Just Play, that's coming back. So Ian, Richie, James Tinsdale, those guys over there, they're doing Mod Tribes for Sylvaneth with the new Illyria War Scroll. So hopefully she's gonna kill some fat boys, show off her new rules, and 740 points apparently. And then Simon's Order Academy. I've been watching a lot of Simon Hall's battle reports. He's really well known for running Cities of Sigmar list, very inventive COS list, and just been playing a whole bunch of different games and digging his channel. He's a great player.
Very nice. Yeah. Nice. All of those are already linked down below. So there you go. Adam, what about yourself, buddy? What do you got? What would you like to share with everybody?
Yeah, so I've been getting into, I mean, as we've been looking at, this War Game Vault kind of place, there's a lot of really interesting games there. And I've been getting more and more interested into indie games for the past couple of years at least. And so I kind of wanted to make a shout out to three of them that I like. And one of them is called Planet 28, which I've talked about a bunch of times before. It's made by Mammoth Miniatures, I believe, out of the UK, Nick Evans. And it's a fun little... It's tiny. It's like it's a little kind of digest size if you were to actually like buy the actual physical book, which I think he does sell from his website. But if you get the PDF, the kind of size doesn't matter. Times a flat circle, all that stuff. And so it is. But it's a fun kind of sci-fi skirmishy game, kind of retro retro illustrations. He does really cool. He does the illustrations himself as well. It's really cool. Nice. It reminds me of zines and stuff like that. That's very cool. Another one that's come out relatively recently is called Forbidden Psalm, and it is if you're familiar with RPGs, the whole concept of like Morkborg, like there's a whole Morkborg RPG thing, and this is kind of a licensed sort of thing where it's a miniature game version of that, but it's I don't know, again, it's a small skirmishy kind of like DIY looking kind of game with really interesting layout and everything like that. And I know.
Is there a summary of what Morkborg is?
It's basically a fantasy game. I don't know a lot about Morkborg the RPG. I know Forbidden Psalm is you're playing a small band of heroes, and there's a mad wizard who will basically pay you if you go get stuff And also, he is very sure that I believe goblins have stolen his socks or something like that. So that's like a whole nother scenario and whatnot. But
Nice.
it's
Yeah.
got solo play, it's got co-op as well, and it's
Cool.
more fantasy. And then a new one that I just picked up today, which I love the cover art, but I also love the insides as well. And it's called Space Weirdos. I don't
I
know.
saw this. Yes, I saw
Yeah.
Space
Oh,
Weirdos.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so Space Weirdos is just this really cool. It's like 16 pages. It's like a $5 book, or zine, basically. Again, all black and white, just two
Mm.
column. Again, kind of makes my old zine loving sort of DIY kind of heart sing a little bit. But it's just a cool little skirmish game, and I like that a lot as well. So there's a lot of these things that are going on right now in the the print on demand and the whatever PDF and all that kind of stuff arena. And so I like seeing those types of games happening. And so there's my pick of the week, or picks of the week.
Very nice. Yeah, I saw Space Weirdos. Is the subtitle on that a skirmish heartbreaker? Is that what it
Yes.
says?
Yeah.
Like,
'Cause
I need to meet the author of this book, because I feel like we would be instant friends, because the fact that the term fantasy heartbreaker was a term out of the 90s that came up, that was applied originally to a set of 7 D&D like games that were all basically D&D, but we fixed this one thing we didn't like.
Right.
Okay.
So it's basically like this game that's old. We just fixed the things that we kind of dug and made it, and now it's like stuck in time.
And the fact that they just self-titled it with that, it's brilliant. So that's what I saw, and I was immediately interested in that. I actually just saw it earlier today as well. I might pick that up, because I am very interested.
As soon as you open the first words in the cover is that Space Weirdos is my skirmish heartbreaker. In RPG terms, a heartbreaker is a fixed version of D&D published by an amateur. In my online circles, a lot of old school D&D people are discovering or rediscovering miniatures wargaming and starting to write rules when they find the big games are too expensive and convoluted. So you're going to see probably more of this. And it's got some sense of humor. So does Morkborg. I mean, honestly, all of them do, but I think that's also sometimes needed as well. I think sometimes we can take ourselves a bit too seriously.
Sometimes.
Maybe. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yes, I'm gonna have to check that one out. Okay, I love it. And you asked about Morkborg, Tyler. Morkborg cannot be explained. Morkborg is an experience. Okay, and it's like going to Pink Floyd Laser Night on acid is what I would describe it as.
Okay.
What a fantasy
That sounds
game.
amazing.
Yeah, the fantasy game.
Yeah.
All right, I'll have to check it out. Nice.
At any rate, my pick of the week is going to be very straightforward. Our good buddy Rob over at the Miniatures Paintbrush did a bat rep for Rain in Hell, which I will link down in the description. They got a couple little rules wrong, but that's okay. It was their first game. It was still a great game. I appreciate him putting that together so fast. I think both he and his opponent are in the chat today, and they are both awesome, and it looks like they had a great time. So go check that out if you want to see them play the game. So there you go.
Very
Awesome.
cool.
All right. So with that, let's turn to some hobby time. Now, Tyler, as we've said before, you don't paint.
Of course.
So
find ways to stay busy, apparently. So
indeed. What you got? Any good games in?
yeah, I've got a few games in. Yeah, we're prepping for a halfway point for the Slow Grow League we've started a while back. So we've got a little 1K'er happening on Saturday, 4 games. That'll be a lot of fun. Running the boys and the pigs, as always. So got a few games in this week. Found out a good reminder about how resilient and apparently killy 10 Blight Kings can be. My poor 6 pigs slammed into them and only managed to kill 3.
Did they have +1 damage on?
They did.
That is.
Matt says 7 of those ales should have died, but 3 was the result.
Seems mathematically unlikely at 2 damage apiece.
Indeed, that's what I thought. So anyway, that was fun. Mostly been researching past AOS tournaments. So I don't know if I mentioned on the show yet, but we are finally in the early stages of planning for what's going to be a 2-day grand tournament in Springfield, Mo. So we don't have a day yet. We're working on it. And yeah, just looking at past events, anything and everything. Awards was the big thing recently. Kind of getting a list of, what are the core standard, and then what are some of the various unique ones. And Actually, on that point, obviously we're going to cover some of the basics, best overall, best painted. But if anybody's got any ideas, would love to hear in terms of, what you might consider a unique, compelling award to have at a 2-dayer. I don't know, maybe add them in the comments or throw me a line on
absolutely.
Twitter.
Hit Tyler up or drop him down in the comments. What awards do you, if you went to a tournament, what awards would you want to see at that tournament? And I say get weird with it, by the way. Like, it's a time for exploration. I know there's a lot of tournaments where people have where there's some really, really interesting awards where the TOs get really creative, and honestly, it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
Because it gives a lot of different people a lot of different things to play for. So I'm all about that. I love when it's not just like, oh, best general, best in faction, best painted, best overall. Like, okay, that's fine. I'm not like, those are sort of the stock standards. There's nothing wrong with them. They're time tested, but we can do more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right.
So,
right on. Very good. Adam, what about yourself? What have you been working on, buddy? What's I mean, I know what you've been working on, what a lot of our hobby time collectively has went to this last week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A little bit of hobby time that I've been able to sneak in. Well, I mean, I've been working on, when I paint on Twitch on Monday nights and on Friday mornings. And on Monday night, this past couple nights ago, I was working on it's a kit bashed. It's going to be a devout for my Demented Cabal. And it is a 3D printed model of a figure from a company called Bestarium Miniatures. And that's who makes the STL. And my good friend Matt printed it for me. And then it doesn't particularly have a head. It's like, it's kind of like a big suit of armor, but inside it's all like tree roots and stuff like that. And where the head would be, there's like, you can see like there's a person inside. They're probably 28 millimeter because this thing is tall. And you can see their arms reaching out like they've been wrapped up and they're being squished in there. And it's like super, cool and whatnot and spooky. But I'm like trying to make a demon. And so I cut that guy's arms off and like basically glued a big skull to it from the big box of skulls from GW. And then added some Chaos Rhino, spikes all over the head. Yeah. As one does, as is tradition. And so, so I've been painting that. The last couple of, I started it on Friday, like the day we released the game, and then I painted it again. Otherwise, I've been just actually touching up. I had been doing previously on stream, I had been doing the Cursed City. I did 4 of the heroes. I did the Witch Hunter guy, the lady with the bird on her shoulder, which may not be a bird, but might be a Griffhound, whatever, the guy who has the very long beard that I thought was a tongue, and then I cut off his face and replaced it with a skull. And the other guy, who was the 4th guy that I did?
The ogre.
Oh no, the foppish guy.
Oh, Mr. Gelsio Oslo the Third, whatever, that guy.
Exactly, first try.
Yeah.
And then I also did the skeleton, the watch captain. So I was working on those 5, and so they're like, I stopped painting them. They're basically close-ish to done, except for their bases. And then I started working on this demon stuff on Twitch, but I'm still going back now and touching up little bits here and there and that kind of stuff. So that's basically all I've had for hobby time lately.
Nice. For myself, well, I already have my cabals because I made a couple different cabals during the playtesting since I needed to have stuff ready to hand other people for all the playtesting we did. So I'm good there. It's kind of sad to like launch the game and I don't have any reason to make more demon stuff because I've already got multiple cabals.
Could do more cabals.
I certainly could. I do like painting demons. And I'm sure I will at some point. As I said on like one of the streams on Saturday or whatever, if I was in any way a smart man or good at this, I would have had like hobby cheatings lined up, that was all like different demon focused stuff that I could be teaching people a hobby about. Yep, I'm not that smart. I'm really not. It didn't work that way.
This is technically our first rodeo.
This is true. Next time, better synergy.
Oh yeah.
Brand awareness. That'll be that kind of thing. Anyways, I too have been painting through some Cursed City stuff. I too painted the guy with the long beard, but I got rid of the head and beard and gave him a skull. So same thing.
Somewhere there's a sculptor at GW who's like really sad about that, and I'm sorry, but it was weird looking, and skulls are better.
It's
you
so
guys
much
know
better
that.
with
You're
a
from
skull.
Games Workshop. Yeah, everything's better with a skull.
Yep. and I'll probably make a video out of him at some point in the future. But he's going to be a necromancer. I'm kind of slowly, accidentally building a Soulblight Gravelord's army. Like I painted all the skeletons, painted that guy's going to be a necromancer. We'll just see if I accidentally back into it. Like maybe I wander into a hobby store and just accidentally buy 2 of those Lucavi Mother of Nightmare monsters. You know, just like mistakes occur. You know,
Yeah, that happens. That happens.
It happens. It happens. I agree with Ninjon, by the way. The Clown Fiesta and the Cork Tower Award need to be at this tournament, confirmed. There you go, yes. Clown Fiesta is you go nuts with bright colors, and Cork Tower is exactly what it sounds like. You're the tallest mini on the tallest Cork Tower. But what I've been working on now is this little guy right here. He's one of 2. These little ogre bodyguard dudes. Yeah, they're really fun. They're just such cool figs. I was just really excited to paint him is honestly my answer. Like, I've been working on so much stuff that was for videos. I recorded a whole bunch of stuff. So Hobby Cheating 300 is coming up. And I recorded something pretty special for that one. I won't say anything more about it. I'm still editing through it all, but it was a lot. It was a lot. And I'm sure everybody else will be like, this is dumb. Why did you even do this? And that's fine. But I've been wanting to do it for a while, so I did it. And we'll see if other people enjoy it. I hope so. But so there was so much between everything we've been doing with working on the book and everything like that. This guy just was like, I want to paint something that's not a tutorial. That's just one fig for me. It's just to relax. So this guy's been my relaxation figure. Because I'm all out of Skaven Clawlords. So he's going to have to do. All right. So.
By the way, Adam, when was your first YouTube video that approximately represents tabletop minions?
I started the channel in early March of 2013. And that was my first, that was my like intro to take. So Tabletop Minions was the name came up with originally, it was going to be a local wargaming club. And so there are some videos even earlier than that on the channel, which are just basically like we would have these meetings where then each week or month or whatever it was, somebody was supposed to sit down and give like a talk about like, well, what is primer, or how do you do this, or how do you do that? I ended up giving all of the talks because nobody else wanted to. And so then we would film them for people who couldn't come to the meetings, and then the whole thing fell apart. And then a couple of years went by, and then I was like, well, I got the domain and the name and the logo, and I'm going to make a new YouTube channel and it'll fit. So I just used it. So, but yeah, technically it started in March of 2013.
Okay. And Vince?
God, I don't know. Probably like either the end of 2014 or the beginning of 2015, I would approximate. That sounds
I was curious if you guys were close. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, boy, you can see what the difference in production value does. Like,
it's that extra year. No, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you helped the belt when I was first looking at content in terms of branding and style. You got style, man, and you probably still absolutely hold it.
Okay, let's see. The very first video I did was in September of 2014. That's there you go. But it's terrible. It's awful. Don't watch it ever. My God, it's horrible. Dear Lord, what a nightmare. All of my initial videos are just straight nightmares. So there you go. Yeah. Okay. Cool beans. Let's gentlemen, are we ready to go to hell? I say so. Let's do this.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So let's let me switch around here. Let's bring up Badow PDF. Make sure that looks okay. Should. Aha, there we go. We're good. All right. So let's talk about Rain in Hell. So Adam, I think we've told this story a few times, but just to bring everybody up to speed, how did we end up writing this game? Because this is your idea. This is your brainchild. Let's be 100% straight.
Sure. Yeah, it was a situation of I have done some game design in the past. A good friend of mine and I, Peter Spahos, he and I produced a couple of games back in the early 90s. Like our first game that we produced was in 1992. We were in college, and and then we did a card game after that. The first game was kind of a gateway game between your board games and your miniature games a little bit, and the second game was just basically like a card game. It's called Zombie Rally, and so I hadn't done anything like that for quite some time, and I had this idea because I've been getting more and more into skirmish games for years because I'm just tired of painting an entire army. I'm not saying that it's wrong for people to do so. Absolutely, it's just for me. I always say it's like the buffet style. I want to do some lizardmen. I want to do some AdMech. I want to do some of these guys. I want to do some of those guys, and just kind of whatever. So anyway, it was a situation of like, I want to make a game. What are some, for lack of a better word, concessions that you can make to help make the game easier to make? And I've been talking about this a little bit over the last couple of weeks, or the last week or so since we've launched the game. If this game was about robot squirrels, it would be way harder to find models for you folks as potential players to find some sort of thing. So I was like, all right, I want to make something miniatures agnostic. So what's something that a lot of different companies make? Demons. Cool. All right. Demons can be all kinds of different things depending on which culture you're talking to. Like the Japanese, like Oni demons are very different than, say, like the more Western demons, and then demons in Africa and all kinds of different stuff. So you got all those options as well. And then thirdly, like initially the idea was that the majority of the artwork was actually all going to be old timey, out of copyright woodcuts, because they did a lot of woodcuts of demons back in the day. Like that was a thing. Like there was
very popular subject. Yeah.
There were no woodcuts of microwaves or televisions or robots or anything like that. It was all pretty much demons and skeletons and people dying, because that's what happened all the time, I guess. I don't know. So, and that stuff's pretty metal as well, if we're going to be perfectly honest. So that was the original plan. I wanted something to be very kind of like metal, kind of, just like, I don't know. I wanted it to be a skirmish game. I wanted it to be easy to find stuff, easy to build stuff, to use as the models. But I also wanted it to be sort of, metal AF, I think, as Doug said.
Yes.
And so yeah, that was kind of where it started from. And then I reached out to Vince. We were hanging out with Sam Lenz at Sam's place in like September of 2019. Vince was visiting, and I only live a little ways away from Sam. And so we got together. We were on Sam's Twitch channel. And I asked Vince a little bit about that kind of stuff. And he was like, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. And then we didn't really talk about it again until I think February of 2020, just before the whole pandemic thing went pear-shaped. And he was again visiting, and we were hanging out with Sam, and we were at dinner, and I kind of brought it up again a little bit. And it was still just kind of noodling around in my head. By that point, I think I had the name figured out already even. And then pandemic happened. Everything's up in the air. And then at some point in October, I was just kind of reached out. I actually went back and looked at the messages recently, and I reached out. And I was like, that thing we were talked about, are you interested? And then we just started kind of meeting online every, Thursday, and just started working from there.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's how it all came together. And, there was a tense period of writing. It's funny to work on this stuff in advance when you can't talk about it and things like that. But we had a lot of back and forth. We set, like I mentioned, we used a lot of the design principles I often evince on the show. So things like, we said, okay, what is this thematically, and what are our guiding principles? What are some of the first principles we're going to operate from? We started sketching out conceptually kind of the different areas of the game, throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing how different ones would align, checking it against the guiding principles, and then eventually you hone that down into the specific rules, right? And so that's how we got here. And obviously now the game is available, as we mentioned. We're really excited about it being out there. I'll talk for just a moment right up front. Let me mention this. So obviously the game, as I hope everybody knows at this point, but just in case they don't, it is a game based on brutal, fast-paced skirmish combat. As mentioned, it is miniatures agnostic. So you can use any miniatures you like for it, and people have been throwing up all sorts of interesting takes on different demons in the Facebook group, which I was excited to see. And it's a game that has a full campaign mode in it, really meant to be played with your friends over time, to be enjoyed over a series of games. The motivating concept of the thing is that your cabal of demons has a certain philosophy, a way that they look at hell, and they are trying to bring that philosophy into reality. By hook or crook, usually at the end of a sword or a long claw, right?
Yeah, we wanted to keep the fluff pretty short. I've come across skirmish games before, like small skirmish games that put a lot of time into the lore, and I'm sure there are people out there who are like, this is very, very, very interesting. But generally for me, I got to be honest, I'm usually like skim, skim, skim. Okay, cool.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like with the skirmish game, that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Obviously, with like a big army game that's been around for 35, 40 years, there are people
yeah.
that are very invested in that. Like that Space Weirdos that I was talking about before. There's like literally no fluff. It's like,
Mm.
this is the rules. There you go. And
Kind
so,
of all in the title.
yeah,
That's
exactly,
it. Yeah,
exactly.
I think we gave you all the fluff we need. It's on
Right.
the cover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it was a situation of I think it's a good idea to kind of go that way, and when if
Yeah.
you want to, but yeah, absolutely.
I still remember there's like a minute elevator version of this I heard from Vince many months ago, and yeah, it blew me away. I mean, it's just a very compelling, kind of powerful concept, like this mix of this notion of various competing philosophies that are trying to shape the realm of hell,
Right.
accordingly. Like,
After
okay,
we
that's an
screwed it up,
idea.
by the way, yeah, absolutely,
Right, after we screwed it up, yeah. Like,
yeah.
okay, that's an idea that 40, never had that thought go through my head before. Love it. Yeah, it's like it's a really nice premise.
I'm thrilled with it, and that's as I've said on other shows, but I'll say again, Adam is really a fantastic partner to work with. It's like for both rules and creativity and ideas. Also, Adam is really good at things like design and layout and
Mm.
graphics and stuff. All things I suck real bad at. So
And
it's a good teamwork.
and I suck at math and like strategy or whatever or strategery,
Mm.
whatever you call it. Yeah, that stuff. So yeah, no, it has been a good partnership because yeah, like I'm like because again, it's a situation where like early on we definitely iterate back and forth and we've got concepts and things like that. And then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, now it's time to like sit down and like crunch on the actual rules and things like that. And then we'd have these weekly meetings and Vince would be coming up with new stuff and bouncing it off of me. And then he'd be like, I'm not sure what to do with this. And then I'd try to throw something in there. I wouldn't be like, oh, I think what you should do is carry the 4 here because that would help with the variance of the algorithm. Like, I don't know what that even means, but I'd be like, it'd be really cool if there was maybe more randomness, or it'd be really cool if there was less random or something like that, like a concept or a
Right,
feeling. And then he would be
right.
like, with him, he'd be like, like, yeah, because I mean, the initiative system, the activation system, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want you go, I go.
Mm.
And I don't want you do all of your stuff and I take a nap and then I do all my stuff and then you take a nap. But
Yeah.
I like the reach into the bag, pull out a dice thing from like let's say like bolt
Bolt
action and yeah, all this kind of
Mm.
star breach and things like that. But I'm like, but I'm looking for something like like you're going to be able to see it. It's not just reach in and react, but it's like an
Yeah.
initial randomness, and now we have to kind of figure out how this turn's going to shake out. And I think that the way that Vince came up with this, I thought was brilliant. It worked out really well. So, and a lot of people have commented about the activation system and how it's unique and interesting, and I think that's what we
Yeah.
wanted to go for.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very proud of it. It's that little thing that I was most proud of in design.
Mhm.
Cody said, "Have you ever considered making a game that doesn't use any random number generation?" I was tooling around with a system. I mean, you could do it. Obviously, lots of games have no random number generation. For example, like chess doesn't really have any random
Sure.
number generation in it, or checkers, or Go, or anything like that, right?
I mean, if you play it the
Um,
normal way, I guess, yeah,
sure. No, my pawns roll for their attacks.
yeah,
Um, I think that you can. I think that one of the challenges is it has to be super duper tight and constrained, because when you eliminate random number generation, you very much get on a road where the higher skill player will tend to win out every time, because they simply know how to utilize their pieces in a better way and are not confounded by the unfortunate nature of fate, right? On
Mhm.
occasion. And so like things can't go wrong for them at a moment because they happen to roll a 1 or something.
hmm
So you really it has to be a super duper 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 tight game, because if not, then one, things go off the rails really quick. If there are small things that smart players can exploit, they just literally will beat the living bejesus out of anybody who doesn't know what they're doing as well. Like every time they'll just thrash people, right? And you can see this in chess, by the way. Like if you're a chess player and you play chess against somebody who is better than you, they will tend to just wipe the floor with you repeatedly, right? Like you don't have a chance. They're like batting around a kitten. And so, you know, I remember there was an episode of Comedians in Cars where one of his guests was talking about playing chess against like a random person he met on the street, like a homeless guy who had a chessboard, and he was like, "I'll play you, but only twice, unless you win." And he plays him twice and beats him twice. He's like, "Okay, that's done. I never play you again." And the reason was because he's not wasting his time, right? He's just this guy who's this chess savant, like trying to find somebody to actually give him a game. So, at any rate, that's what I'll say about that. Okay.
I saw some people asking about the art and stuff like that a little bit in there, and I don't. We're going to make a blog post that's going to have all of the different, because a majority of the artwork that's in the book is, and like if you see this guy kind of on the screen here, he's kind of peeking in between the different boxes and all that kind of stuff. Like that's a photograph of a 3D printed model. That's not a digital painting. Well, it is. What it is Vince and I got 3D prints from a bunch of different companies, and like I said, we're going to make a blog post so you can see where we got these from. I don't remember all the names. I know Lord of the Prince.
Archvillain Games was another one.
Archvillain was one of them. Yeah. Anyway, but so we're going to make a blog post where people can see that, because we've had a lot of people ask. But so a lot of these images in the book are 3D prints that we then painted, and then we photographed on like a white background, and then we worked with artistsempire.com, which is hopefully you've been seeing Artists Empire on Twitter or on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And Scott does these digital paint overs where he adds in the sky and the smoke and the grit and the glowing eyes and the spittle and all that kind of cool stuff. And it worked out spectacularly. Like a lot of them, to me, I painted some of them and Vince painted them, and they don't look like photographs to me. They look like paintings. And so, yeah, they're super cool.
Yeah, when you first showed me some of the art, I was like, what? That is incredible. Like, I can't believe that's the thing I painted that came to life in this picture.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I think the Lord of the Pit one, that's kind of towards the back part of the book, I sent you an image of it after it was done, because that was one of the first things he finished. And I'm like, here you go. And you were like, that, how does that, yeah, because it doesn't, he does really amazing work. Yeah. So, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, good stuff. Let's see. And somebody said, so somebody said, did we join forces with Titan Forge? Nope, that's just one of those things that lined up well. Because, yeah, I guess Titan Forge's new release for June, they're 3D printing. And I guess their new one is all demons. Yes.
I think I saw somebody mention that on Twitter, actually. Yeah.
And, just complete random chance. Like, sometimes life works out. I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, there you go. We were very, very happy about that. So the book begins. I'm just good. Like, I've got the book up, by the way. This is the actual PDF for everybody. We're just going to kind of walk through this and use this to facilitate discussion. If people do have questions as we go, feel free to drop the questions in. I won't relegate everybody to like some Q&A section or something like that. If you've got questions, you can feel free to drop them in now. I'll be watching and we can answer them. Brandon S. says Cast and Play as well has a demon month. Oh, cool. There you go. All right. So another demon month. Boy, it's a good month for Rain and Hell to join. Look at all these demon months happening.
Is that June? I mean, is it just a June thing? I wouldn't think so. I mean, it's getting warmer. I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Must be. Yeah, that's a very funny thing. Okay. All right. So, we start out with a story. Basic story of the game. Hell's a place. It's this other dimension. It's not like the traditional Judeo-Christian conception of hell or anything like that, but it is a dimension of demons. And in this other dimension, for the longest time, these demons basically had an evil but ordered existence, ruled over by the Directorate of Hell, where sort of their single mission was to go to Earth and get souls. And they would do this in lots of different ways, through contracts that they would write with humans for power, sort of that traditional kind of story, you sold your soul to the devil kind of thing. They would also lure mortals back into hell through there was one portal that connected the two realms. The trick is they had to lure them under false pretenses because humans had to enter willingly. They couldn't drag them through the portal. And so everything's going fine and dandy in Hell World for a long time. When, unfortunately, then somebody gets caught. Like a demon gets caught. That's over there. And when the demon gets caught, there's a very clever group of humans who basically get information out of the demon and learn all about Hell and the Directorate and their mission and kind of get the full skinny. Decide they've had enough of this nonsense, as humans often do.
They kind of kick it up the chain, like it goes to the church, and then it goes from the church to the universities, and then the government, and so it's a because this has been going on for a long time, and the people who rule Earth in different facilities have know this, but now they've got a leg up.
There you go. And so eventually what the humans do is they say, all right, that's it. As I said, enough of this nonsense. They rally up a big team, big group of humans, go into hell, destroy the Directorate, cause a lot of chaos, close the portal. Okay? And so all of the leadership of hell is slain or destroyed or displaced. The portal to hell, their important avenue of souls, is collapsed. And so now we join the story some amount of time later, some age later. Time obviously works differently in hell anyways. And hell is in chaos. This is effectively a post-apocalyptic story in hell. Like, we snuck a post-apocalyptic game in on you, right? Because hell had an apocalypse, right? Where all of their leadership and their society crumbled around them. So now we find groups skirmishing in the wastelands, trying to bring a new vision of hell into power. Or maybe just exacerbate the existing conditions, as a matter of fact. Some people think that maybe actually this is the best way, and this is how it always should have been, and we were fooling ourselves by trying to live in a society. We're demons, let's act like it. Right.
No spoilers, but this has gone well with The Good Place, which you've been bugging me to watch for the last 2 years, and I'm finally...
I don't know if you're going to read it, but I'm wearing my Good Place shirt. There you go, right there. Yes. Yep. I had to get a shirt that was appropriate for tonight, and the Good Place shirt was the only possible one to wear.
Indeed.
Holy mother forking shirt balls. So at any rate, that's where we kind of join up, is with these demons in here. Just a quick note, because I think this is a question that gets asked a lot too. What is hell like? That is to say, like, what does this look like, right? Like, if I'm going to make terrain, what's the sort of, what is the terrain of hell? And the answer is anything inhospitable, I think, right? Adam, I mean, that's how you'd phrase it. Like, how do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're like, in at least in Judeo-Christian stuff, it's, lake of fire and all that kind of stuff and whatever. And it really, like, there's a little bit of that going on here and there, but there's also like dry sulfur, sulfurous steppes of tundra. There's frozen wastes here and there even, there's toxic pools. So as far as like actual like modeling for your terrain, anything that looks, and there's even ruins, because there was building, there was, I mean, to some degree, almost commerce going on before everything went all, wobbly.
Sideways. Yeah.
And so you can use ruins from, anything maybe vaguely Gothic looking, or whatever, it's not like we're dealing with, office buildings particularly, like that. It's but yeah, so there's a lot of things you can do with that. You can do things, like I said, toxic pools, rocky crags. I mean, we go through later on in the book, we go through a little bit of the different options for terrain, and that's a good indicator of what you can, kind of stuff you can use.
Yeah, 100%. I've always I don't see any reason why there wouldn't just be a bunch of inhospitable stuff. It's like the sort of same thing as we would expect in our world, but worse in every way. Just horrible. Dardock X had asked question, you mentioned many more things written than was published, as you do during design. Any chance for a release of this Rain in Hell sketchbook or something? I doubt it, only because most of the stuff that was cut for a reason. So like there's no director's cut to put out there. There's not going to be a Snyder cut for this book, because everything that was there was cut, by Adam and I, because it wasn't good or wasn't good enough.
It wasn't like our publisher was like, we're going to get rid of this whole section, and then we're like, no, we're going to bring it back later. Like we're the publisher, so yeah, no, it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys mentioned doing a blog post with various files related to demons. Maybe we could do something on terrain. I've been working on this terrain project. We'll be announcing down the road. And yeah, I'm thinking of all the different kinds of terrain that I've seen over the last few weeks.
Oh,
That might be
100%.
very relevant.
Yeah, I think that terrain came up in an interesting discussion that happened in one of the Facebook groups today. And I think it is. I think we underestimate and undervalue like what having good terrain and really thinking about the nature of the terrain you're using in the game means, right? Because it can hugely impact the game. Just another quick thing. Neverwinter said, "Will anyone here do a bat rep demo of Rain in Hell, or will Ash Barker be doing it first?" So Ash had said the game's in the queue. I don't know what that means as far as when it goes, because he has a lot of games that people have asked him to demo.
Absolutely.
Over at Gorilla Miniature Games. But you don't have to wait. The Miniatures Paintbrush, which will be linked down below after the show, I just didn't get the link in there beforehand. He does have a bat rep up right now of the first game that he and his buddy played through. So you can go check that out right now.
And I know that a group called Skirmish Miniature Gaming or Skirmish Miniature Games, I watched their video today, and they talked about like this video was going to go up after the bat rep, but I looked and the bat rep wasn't up yet. So I'm assuming they must have filmed it and are still working on it. But so I could see them probably next too. And you had said also that you thought Doug was working on.
Yeah, I think Doug had mentioned he was going to do one as well. Yeah,
2 plus tough. Yep.
All right. Okay. Sorry, just catching up with all the. Just as I said, generally inhospitable when people said so. The inside of an IKEA or Detroit. I think those are both absolutely fair. Absolutely. Molly says, how long does it normally take for the physical books to arrive? It varies a lot based on where you are in the world. I think on their site, what do they list as the shipping time?
Well, things are slightly slower because of COVID and all that. They have a facility in the US that prints and a facility in the UK that prints. So if you're not kind of close to those two, it can take longer, but I don't frankly know. I swear somebody did say that I know I've seen somebody say that they've gotten a shipping notice that it's happened already. Right. So that's it's not crazy long. And it also depends on whether, like, if you picked media mail, it'll take a good deal longer potentially. So it depends on what you pick for your shipping option too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And yes, Stephen Powell said Ash did do a man reads book. Yes, he did. He did do a man who reads book.
Which has been pretty popular. We were looking at it before.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. We were very grateful to him for doing that. Ash is an awesome guy, and it was very, very, very nice of him.
Yeah.
Sergeant Mash said my book shipped on Monday, so there you go. I would imagine that they're out there. Okay. So we'll just talk about what is playing the game like? What do you need? That kind of stuff. Basic stuff you need is a play area of roughly 22 by 30 inches. If that number's familiar to you, it's because that's the exact size of a Warcry or Kill Team board, which we thought were pretty popular and out there, but at the same time, it's also a pretty easy space to just mark off of your larger gaming table. Like, you could very easily just measure that out in a larger space and just put down some tape or put some rulers at the edge or something like that.
And if you love using lots and lots of terrain, there's no reason not to go a little larger as well. Or if you decided that all your bases are going to be massive, because again, all this is suggestions. It's your game. You know what I mean? You play it the way you want. So, like I've seen some people online go, well, I don't play Warcry or anything, so I don't have that. I'm like, well, that's fine. Then use something close. I mean, that's why we play these games.
Right. Exactly. Like if you want to use a 3x3 board, that'd be fine. I would just recommend you increase the starting areas to 9 by 9 inches instead of 6 by 6. So you get into the action in about the same amount of time, because that'll sort of compensate for the increase in volume. But you can absolutely play with different sizes. And so if you whatever makes sense for you. Is what I'll say. You need 3 to 5 pieces of terrain, so not too bad. Obviously, if you already have any kind of other terrain for other war games, assuming it's not, as you said, like industrialized city buildings or stuff, it's probably fine.
Yeah.
Ruins, shrines, forests, giant crystals, tar pits, craters,
rocky crags.
Yeah, all fine.
Yeah,
all fine.
And you don't have to fear any oddities of terrain either. You guys have one of the best rules on verticality that I've seen, which in terms of how you handle climbing and all of that, very, very simple and elegant. Love it.
Yeah, we tried to keep the terrain system simple but really effective. There's one situation that somebody brought up in a Facebook group today that I thought was interesting. I'll probably discuss it when we get to terrain.
Sure.
That you could, like, if you design your terrain or you're using terrain that is in a certain exact way, you can have a sort of, like, it can lead to a bad situation. But that's just, there's always going to be nuance, right? Because terrain has an infinite number of permutations, so there's always a chance, right? Okay. And then you need 7 to 10 miniatures to represent your demons. There are recommended base sizes. Most of the base sizes we're talking about here are basically 25 to 40 mil. We offer a range instead of a specific base for each demon type. So as long as you're generally in the range, you're fine.
Leaders go up to 50 and the devout go up to 60.
Correct. Yep. So if you want if you want your leader and your devout to stand apart, we agree that can look very cool. But by the way, they don't have to.
Yeah.
You can have them on bases too. Power doesn't necessarily equate to size. You can have, like I always, think about, this is one of the things I mentioned to you, I think at one point, because we were actually having discussions about, well, do we want to mirror this to size in some way? And we both agreed no. One of my favorite factions in Malifaux was the Neverborn. And one of the, like, most powerful brutes is a little tiny girl. She's like a 10-year-old girl, this or 8-year-old girl, right? And she just has, like, a knife behind her back and a little basket full of skulls, and she will rock you. She's a beast. Okay, so, like, I love stuff like that. So yeah, there's no reason you have to necessarily make them big, but you can. It's however you see your warband. That's the point. And then a number of D12s equal to the demons in your cabal, and at least 10 D6 dice. There you go. Get them D12s. This was one of those things that, to me, I was shocked more people don't have, because I just have buckets and buckets of dice. But I guess that's what 30 years plus of being a role player will do to you, playing D&D for more than 30 years. There's just all open drawers, and I'll be like, oh, dice. There's just dice in here.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, I think and it's one of those things where I guess we were looking at it from the aspect of just being old gamers who've been collecting for a long time. But if you're relatively new to this and you've been predominantly playing just miniature games, you've probably just been mostly playing with D6s, frankly. So yeah, the D12s is a little bit of a different thing, but it's not pretty much any game store is going to be able to carry them and that kind of stuff. So, and then also if you don't have a game store near you, like, you can get these little baggies, usually like of 10 for not too expensive on places like Amazon and probably other types of online shops that sell game stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Just wait for the future game with it we write, wherein I somehow trick Adam into using Zucchi dice. So it's all D5s, D7s, D11s.
9s,
yeah, all the Zucchi dice. Like, only the Zucchi dice. That's all you use. Then we'll really throw you for a loop.
Very sharp.
Okay.
I still have a D100.
Oh, absolutely.
Like from the early days.
Everybody who plays role-playing games at some point in your life, you buy the D100, you roll it once and go, oh.
Yeah. That's really hard to read. Wow. That's it. Yeah, basically, yeah.
I guess we could have just stuck with the 2D10s. Yeah, that was probably better. Okay. Let's see. So this is I'm not going to go through all the different things or the example of play, because you can, like, those will kind of be on their own. And we'll get into the meat of this here. So let's just talk. We're going to kind of move through here. It kind of tells you how to start a play and how the structure of a round and things like that. But I do want to talk about the activation system, because that is probably a thing worth talking about. So the nature of the activation system is thusly. This is where the D12s come in. You roll a number of, at the start of the round, you roll a number of D12s equal to the number of demons in your cabal. So if you have 7 demons on the field at that moment, then you roll 7d12. As you lose demons over the course of the game, you will roll less dice. So if 2 demons die from your 7 and you got 5 left, you roll 5d12s. Both players do this. Once you've rolled, you then set them up on your play sheet. There's a little spot on your play sheet where you put the dice in descending order. And then you just activate in order, down from the highest to the lowest, going back and forth in order. Now, if there is a tie, then the person who didn't activate last goes. So in other words, if I rolled a 12 and an 11, and Adam, you rolled an 11 as your highest die, then I would activate my 12. Adam would activate his 11 because he didn't go last, so it alternates, and then it would come back to me for my 11. Okay, so pretty straightforward, and we just keep going. When you activate a demon, you take the die off your play sheet, you place it next to the demon to show that they've been activated. You can't activate the demon more than once per round. And then that activation dice has been spent. Assuming nothing else happens, you will spend 1 die per demon, and they will all activate and do their various things. And that's pretty straightforward. If you have more players, then you rotate clockwise, again following the same rule of who didn't activate last in a clockwise fashion. So it is what I love about it. What I love about this system, and one of the reasons that we wrote it, was because I like the idea of there being randomness to it. Yeah, that is to say, like, who's going to go is random. It's not a hard locked order. But at the same time, I love the idea that it's visible randomness.
Right.
Okay.
It's randomness, but you see it at the beginning of the turn. It's not,
yes,
I have to react every single time I reach into the bag, or we have to roll off for each activation or anything along those lines. It is at the beginning of the turn, there's a flurry of activity, and then you're just like, okay, so he's going to have three movements, 3 different activations in the 6 phase because he rolled 3 sixes out of this, and I know that now. So I'm going to keep that in mind. And I know that and so you're looking at their dice and you're looking at your own dice and you're kind of eyeing it up. It's kind of like in Star Wars X-Wing, because in Star Wars X-Wing, it was based off of your pilot skill. So the lower skill pilots had to move first. And so they kind of got all the position, and then the higher skilled pilots got to move towards the end and kind of get a beat on the lower pilots and things like that, except that it's changing every single turn. You know what I mean? Instead of just being like, hey, this is the way it is during the entire game, it's like now all of a sudden things are different. And so I really like the activation system.
Yeah, one of the things I'm always thinking about in game design is symmetrical knowledge versus asymmetrical knowledge, right? And then how players play with that. And in general, one of the places where skill can lever in pretty strongly is in symmetrical knowledge. So, for example, we both know what we both rolled. That's symmetrical knowledge, right? It's open information that is completely known to both parties, right? So there's a chance to lever skill there because I can choose to use the things that this knowledge in a better way than my opponent by activating the right demons in the right order, setting myself up for success in the beginning of the turn, for later in the turn, right? And so on and so forth. And so that, like, this really ticked a lot of boxes for me. I will openly admit that when you first read it, it can feel a little fiddly. Like, I don't disagree. I've had some people say, wow, that feels kind of fiddly. It does. But I promise you, the first time you roll with, standing up apart from another human, it's just going to be smooth as butter because you're just counting down numbers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, everybody can count down from 12 to 1.
And the thing that's also, I think, important is, like, it's mimicking to some degree, like, because of the way that this battle is happening, it's happening predominantly all hand to hand. It's all melee combat, and it's on a board that you would think that the leader can kind of see relatively well and kind of get the lay of the land every round. Like, oh, things are not going well for me this turn, this round, whereas they're going better other times. Games like Bolt Action, what that whole concept of reaching into the bag and pulling out a die is that the fog of war is making it so we can't plan any further ahead than basically the next thing that happens, because stuff's exploding and there's dirt in the air and smoke and this building fell over and all this crap and all that, and so that's kind of like the way that the activation works really can mimic what's going on in the actual battle. Whereas, and there's nothing wrong with it, but sometimes just well, you go and then I'm going to go and you go. It doesn't really bring into consideration what's actually happening. It's just kind of it's not difficult to do. It's an easy thing for people to understand. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go more abstract, that's great. But if you want to have something that's a little bit more indicative of the actual action, then you kind of have to look for different ways to make the activation work well.
Yeah. So I'm sure. So it's up to 10 demons in a warband?
Correct. Yeah.
Maximum,
Your
yeah.
cabal
Okay.
max is at 10. Yep.
So I'm just thinking about the spectrum and the potential for an extreme outcome,
Hmm.
where someone beats the math and rolls a bunch of low numbers,
Yep.
and the other person rolls a bunch of high numbers. I'm sure you
Sure.
guys have thought about that. What are your thoughts on that and how that might impact the game and blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons we use the D12 as opposed to a D10, right? So to
Yeah.
create more variance than there are slots, right? It expands the variance just enough.
Mm,
When I sort of ran the math on doing it with a D20, because you might think like, oh, why not go all the way up and just do it with D20s, right? Then
mm,
you've really got a lot of space where you'd have less doubles. The problem is doubles aren't necessarily bad. But by that I mean both players achieving the same number, because when both players achieve the same number, it starts to create just a standard back and forth rhythm, right?
right.
So I wanted it tight enough that the 12 was kind of the perfect math. It created just enough space to where
Mm,
it became extremely mathematically unlikely to have huge runs,
sure.
right? But
Yeah.
quite likely to have small runs. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh so the idea being like it's pretty common in
Like,
your role to be able to activate 2 or 3 times, but then your
mm-hmm.
opponent to activate 2 or 3 times, right? It's
Right.
much
It's
less
gonna,
common for you to activate 6 times and then them go 6 times, which is
Hmm.
what would happen if you spread out to a d20. You'd actually increase the likelihood of that
okay.
happening, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's
That's
math.
yeah. No, it's cool. Now, did you start, was this the first idea or was this the sixth idea in terms of an activation or an initiative?
I think this was actually a pretty early idea. This kind of came to me as
Mm,
I was just bouncing around concepts based on what Adam had
mm,
said. Like Adam had thrown out kind of the parameters of like, hey, here's the things I think would be cool, and I was definitely in agreement. And this
mm,
kind of just floated to my head one day, right? That I was like,
yeah.
okay. I mean, I had to, there wasn't it wasn't perfect. It wasn't some platonic form
Right.
that just popped into my head fully formed.
There's a
Yeah.
light coming down.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, wasn't that. But it was pretty close. So I didn't. It
Yeah.
didn't undergo a huge amount of changes. We did. There was a lot of talk about the dice. That was sort of the main thing, right? We kind of bounced
Hmm.
around. I actually started on D12s, but then we had to go up and down and test around, right?
It's
Let
probably
me
a separate
answer
conversation
Stardog
out of,
here real quick. Hold on. So
uh,
Stardog says, so I basically have need to customize current models to build my own unique models for this game. So the answer is no. You could certainly use any of your current models. So like if you have like
mm,
they're demons, it's whatever you want demons to look like. So if you have, for example, let's just be very on the nose. If you've got some current Games Workshop demons like Bloodletters or stuff like that, sure, just use them straight away. No problems, no drama at all, right? However, if you wanted to customize them some and you've got a bunch of bits from various demons that you've had over the years, hey, start slamming stuff together. Go nuts. You can do that, right? That's fine too. If you want to use it as an excuse to maybe buy a couple weird miniatures from a line you always thought was cool but never had a use for,
Hmm.
good chance to do that. Pick up some 3D prints off of My Mini Factory, off of Etsy or whatever. Good chance to do that, right? So it's whatever is going to be, make your vision be real is the answer there, Stardog. So there you go.
yeah.
Miniatures agnostic as a identifier is actually, and I made a video about this a little while ago. It was part of a video. It's actually a bit of a warning, and all it's
Mm,
saying is we don't have a miniature line for you to use. You're going to have to come up with something yourself. Now you can use whatever you want, but technically any game you can use whatever you want. If you're going to play competitive AOS or 40K and it's an official tournament, they probably want you to use actual GW stuff. And then other tournaments do the same. I don't know if you can play Malifaux with just GW stuff
mm,
or stuff from other companies, whatever. But when you were playing with your friends and things like that, you can use whatever you models you want for any game. The idea of miniatures agnostic, when a company says, "Oh, this game is miniatures agnostic," that just means you're going to kind of have to figure out, and that's so some people that's like, oh man, I don't want to, but other people are like, oh cool, now I could use this and this and this
Right,
and that
right, right.
and whatever, but I could also use stuff I've already got, so yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
nice.
All right. Uh, Josh says if you have a giant pile of opportunity in your closet, maybe you can pull from. That works too. Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of us have shelves of opportunity in our closets. 100%. Um, Okay, so you go through the round, you activate all your demons, the rounds repeat. Obviously, this is all framed by a scenario. We'll talk about scenarios a little later, as to because those are just kind of the obviously the structure for what you're playing for in the game. The building your cabal. Let's talk about how this gets built. So there's sort of a couple different levels of one-off game. If you want to do like a 100-point game or a 200-point game, fine, you can just roll with that. Now, when we say that, here's an important thing that I think has come up. In the 200-point game, it's actually not incredibly likely you will spend all 200 of those points. Like your cabal will be maxed in 200 points, and you might still have a few points left over. That's intentional because we were assuming if you're doing it as a one-off, you wanted to kind of get the full experience of here's a full cabal, and I can buy a bunch of greater demons. Like you can use all your points if you buy heavy into graders. Demons have 3 different levels: lesser, greater, and superior. But the key being is that the actual level of the demons, like somebody with 190 points playing somebody with 180 points, actually is basically going to feel completely the same. Like there's not any difference there in the outcome of that. The 190 point person has no real advantage because you both have this. You've both spent to full cabals. Like you both got the same model, so that's going to do a lot more work than the minor points differential. So we set that higher bar knowing you would often have points left over for that kind of a standard game, because we just assumed if you flipped that setting, you were like hey, we want to get together and have a big smackdown game, right? So this was the way to blow the doors off and allow you to take anything from that range without constraining you too much, right? Like, because that's kind of the idea. But we really hope that what people play is campaign games, which start at 100 points, smaller cabals, and then you build up over time, right? So, I mean, Adam, I know campaign was a huge point for both of us, but I know you especially.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a particularly competitive player, and I love, as I've been playing more skirmish games lately, I also really, really love the concept of, it's not role playing per se. It's not like, okay, well, we're going to go into the tavern and ask the tavern keeper what's been going on. I mean, it's not that. It's more like video game role playing, where like, okay, cool, I went up another level and it's time to put points into this and put points into that. There's never the more, I don't want to say acting, but that kind of thing. It's more just like, as I play, or as you and I play, let's say if we're going to play a campaign, I love the aspect of having these demons kind of have their own personality and get smarter or better or find relics or get titles. I mean, the titles thing was kind of a big deal, and a lot of people have reacted quite well to that. And I've been really glad that idea that was kind of rolling around in my head. I'm like, I want like Xbox achievements, but I want them to mean something, and I want to give them to the actual demons. Early concept was like the demons were going to have a name. And if you knew the name, because there's that whole concept, if you know the true name of the demon,
true naming.
And I was trying to figure out a way to like work that in and why that would be beneficial. But I'm like, and then I think from that, it was where all of a sudden I was like, the idea of titles is cool. Like you could have this guy just be called, Shattered, Shattered Eye. But if he's Shattered Eye, the Betrayer, that's pretty cool. And if it actually gives him a benefit because he got the Betrayer title, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Ben Moore, by the way, said, how do you feel about the description Frostgrave with demons? Well, one, I would take it as an immense compliment, since Frostgrave is probably the most successful independent game of its type ever published.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be quite a compliment that I don't think I deserve or would live up to. I'll say there's a lot of mechanical differences there.
Oh, and Frostgrave is also a lot thicker of a book. I mean, there's a lot more going on. I don't have Frostgrave near me. No, I don't. But it's a much thicker of a book. Stargrave as well. I really love the concept of Stargrave, and I've been working on and off here and there in my free time on a Stargrave crew, and I want to do a couple of those. And so, it's not every. I guess I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, if it's a campaign game, then it's Stargrave. But I mean, Warcry's got a campaign game. I mean, Kill Team technically has a campaign game. It's not. I hope that they make better campaign rules, maybe when they make second edition Kill Team. But campaign, I think, there's nothing wrong with the competitive stuff, and the competitive stuff is honestly the easy part to some degree. As long as you can make the rules work pretty well, the competitive stuff is relatively easy because it's predominantly just one-off games. You're just playing a game, and there you go, and then you're done. Right. The competitive or the campaign stuff is actually a little bit harder because it can become to a situation, in some campaigns where it just, someone can just run away with it. And that's part of the reason why we also didn't really want to do you play 7 games and then you're done, or you play 5 games, or you first person to this. Because if you start to play a campaign, even in this system, and one person just starts to run away with it, then you can call it and start over, and you're not like, well, now we gotta grind through several more, because it's just we thought it was better to keep things open ended. If things are real tight, like neck and neck, you could just keep playing and play 20 games. That'd be fine too.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
AF, I agree. Planet 28. You mentioned that earlier. It's a great game. Let's see. Michael Newbank says, is it possible to have a battle with someone you just met using your campaign cabal versus theirs from a separate campaign? Sure. The easy way to evaluate that would just be to see, like, do you both have the same number of demons, or ask them how many campaign games they've played. As long as it's close, you're fine. Like, actually, numbers tend to matter a decent amount in this. Like, if you're at a starting number of 7 and you're maybe like 1 campaign in and you have a game in and you haven't recruited anybody else yet, and they're 5-6 games in and they've maxed out their number of demons, and they already have got a bunch of additional essences and relics and stuff, it's like, oh, that might be a bit tough. They're going to probably be on some pretty significantly advanced footing. But as long as you're in sort of similar places in the campaign, there's no reason that you couldn't just both have a game.
It's generally designed to be that you and a friend sit down and play, or you and a group, if you're going to be playing later, let's say up to 4 or something like that, kind of using the scenarios that have that ability. But it's not so much like, oh, I'm going to go, it's not like like a video game where you're like, you've leveled up to this point and then you go into a PvP area and now you're going to play with somebody else who's of the same level, or maybe wildly different levels. It's generally more like you could take those same models and then kind of go back to 0 and then decide to play with this person and just play a one-off game if you wanted to. It could get kind of unfair, if they're at 10 demons and you're just only 1 or 2 games in and you still are sitting at 7 or 8 max.
Yep. Let's see. Hobby Hero said campaign tracking sheet log. I'm not sure what I'd put onto that for a campaign tracking. Most of the campaign tracking stuff you can do on the play sheet that's there. We are working on a title tracker. That'll go up relatively soonish. Obviously, there's a lot of things we're in the middle of trying to get a lot of different supporting materials out for the game to keep making sure we're putting stuff in your hands that are going to help facilitate good games. The title tracker is one of the next things that'll be around there. And that's to help you keep track of your titles, because some of them are earned over multiple games. So this is just an easy way to do that. There we go. Okay. So your cabal consists of leaders, a leader, a devout, and minions, which we'll get through all of them in a minute. But before we get into them, let's talk about the philosophies, because this is probably was the most fun thing to concept out and write, I think, in the whole book. So as we mentioned, the nature of demons in hell in this sort of post-apocalyptic world is they're all fighting to bring their philosophy to the fore, right? So they're trying to build up enough power and souls and whatever to come out as the sort of dominant philosophy. And the 6 philosophies are, you can see them on screen here, but it's the Lords of Hell, the Earthbound, the Demented, the Brokers, the Judges, and the Empty. The Lords of Hell being what I would call like the sort of, we want to go back to the good old days group. They're very, they want to restore the former order, right? The Earthbound are just basically like, nah, hell's over. Let's get out of here. We got to get enough souls to power that portal back up somehow. And then back to Earth, where all the good stuff is. Now, they have, as I've said many times, they have kind of an underpants gnomes plan. It's like step 1, collect souls. Step 2, step 3, we get back to Earth, right? So like there's a missing part of their plan, but darn it, are they down for it? The Demented are those who've sort of chosen to embrace the current reality. They're very sort of anarchistic. They're anarchists. And there we go.
Those who seek after order in this madness are the truly insane. That's a great quote.
Exactly. That is their quote. And we tried to give everybody like quotes and stuff like that, so you really got a feel for them. We also gave you
Yeah.
iconography in all of these, so that if you want to model your demons with little iconography that sort of represented it, again, you don't have to in any way, right? But it's
Mhm.
just little visual signifiers that we thought could be cool. That way, no matter what models you're using, oh, you're the Demented, so hence you use these particular icons. That's neat. It kind of ties them all together, even if you use a wide range of different models.
Little different extra hobby kind of hints, I guess. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, they're embracing the chaos. The brokers, who are the sort of they are the ultra capitalists, I suppose, but really they're war profiteers. That's the best way you can say it. They're buying and trading in souls. I defined them, I think, when we talked on Friday or Saturday, as the heads of Bullet Town and Gas Town and Water Town or whatever
Right.
in
Yeah.
Mad
Yeah.
Max Fury
Yeah.
Road, right?
Mhm,
Like they're
mhm.
rich because they have a huge supply of the main resource everybody needs,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
right? And
And
so,
I don't have to be good at fighting if I can pay somebody else to do
right,
it.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think this isn't going to land, but I don't care. I watched a whole lot of Boston Legal back in the day because, it's a fun show, whatever.
Mm.
And there's a scene where the main protagonist character, he gets in a bar fight, but he's also a very rich lawyer. So instead of getting in the bar fight, he just leans over to two guys and is like, I'll give you $500 to fight. He's like, $500, you, and you each, if you fight this guy for me. And so they just jump the heck out of the guy who was challenging him. And I'm like, that's the brokers to a T, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the judges use and abuse basically the rules and the sort of meta rules of hell, because hell is this alternative dimension that has weird rules. They don't abide by the traditional laws of physics. So they're basically like mad scientists after a fact, I suppose. Like they use their technology is the metaphysical laws of hell, and they use it and abuse it for power. They're like the worst Silicon Valley would have to offer, I suppose, right? Just abusing the rules of technology to win.
Indeed, yeah. You mentioned, I mean, the whole role playing. I mean, yeah, we talked a little about that. There's certainly plenty of opportunity to really lean into that as you're playing your games. Getting into your role as the judges.
Mhm.
That'd be fun as hell.
Absolutely. And then the empty are the true ultra nihilists,
Mm.
right? Like they do believe in nothing, but they want to see hell and just everything unmade. Like this is what they saw from this is that the lesson that they learned is that this is all a failure,
Mm.
right? We don't deserve to exist anymore. All of this is wrong. It was wrong before, it's wrong now, it's broken, and it cannot be fixed, right? Effectively, it's like they dropped the teapot, it shattered into a million pieces. They don't think it can be glued back together. The only thing to do is sweep it out and throw it out in the trash, right? So they're
Yeah.
seeking after oblivion.
And the main reason we went with these philosophies, like in a lot of games, there are factions. In a lot of
Right.
indie games, there's no factions. It's just like you make some folks and they fight each other, and that's cool. And then there are other games, obviously, Age of Sigmar, 40K, Malifaux, like all these different games where there's wildly different reasons why these factions exist, and the models are very specific. You wouldn't use the Lumineth folks in the place of Space Marines, and you wouldn't use this, and it's the models and the story are tied so closely together. And because this is miniatures agnostic, we wanted to give people the options to be able to do what they want, but we still wanted to give them also sort of like this kind of faction sort of situation. So rather than just making factions and then hoping that people's models would sort of fit, we're like, well, what's kind of like a faction but maybe not? Let's not like change the race or the idea. Like the idea is the important part, and like what they believe, and that's where the philosophies came from. And then the benefit to the philosophies is that it tweaks the way that the leader works, it tweaks the way that the devout works, it tweaks the way that the entire warband can work, because there's a different rule for each of those three things within each of the different philosophies.
Yeah, and I really like what we came to with sort of each one of these. The devout, each philosophy has its own unique devout, like he just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I really am happy with all of the different devout and how they work. They have their own unique mechanics. The leader has his own unique mechanic, and then sort of the lesser demons, the minions, are all kind of shared across, but they'll be modified by whatever's going on in your philosophy. So
Do you guys have a favorite child of the 6 philosophies?
Oh, I do, absolutely. Yeah, I think we both actually have the same one, but Adam, what's yours?
Well, so like Earthbound story wise, yes. I just
Mm,
I love the concept of these demons just been like, all right, we're gonna take this fight back to those jerks who screwed everything up here. You know what I mean? I like that
right.
concept a lot. That being said, I'm really enjoying the more modeling opportunities and things like that, and a little bit of the gameplay stuff for the Demented. So I've kind of
Mm,
actually just discovered that recently. But like, I love this. The story of the Earthbound is kind of more my jam. So
Yeah. For me, it would be the Earthbound and the Judges because the Judges, honestly, mostly because of their two devouts. Like
mm.
the Earthbound have the Succubus, who I truly love. She's a very impactful piece, but she's also very fragile, so you got to really
Yeah.
be careful with her. I
She really
always
stood
like
out
pieces
reading
like that
through
in the
it.
game.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Judges have just like the absolute bruiser of their philosophy. Like their devout is not to be trifled with.
Right.
He is the heavy, right? And so he can do real work. Um, I see. Sergeant says the empty. I mean, I had a person playtesting who really liked playing the empty. We got a lot of runs in with the empty. And I mean,
Mm,
there's such a different play style when you play with the empty. It's so funny how different a lot of things end up being. How crazy different you can make it just with some minor tweaks, like the particular relic and essence you choose for your leader, and the leader you choose, and the devout that comes with it, and then the bonus you get. It's funny how different, even when you share a lot of the same pieces, it can end up feeling. So,
yeah. Mm,
all right. So yes, that's kind of how these all break down. As you can see, they all, as we mentioned, have a quote. They all have their specific devout. The common iconography we mentioned. We go into their philosophy, and then, as mentioned, there is a leader bonus. So your leader itself gets some extra bonus for being sort of the chief prophet of this particular belief system, and then also there's a special ability for that then hands out to your entire cabal. So there you go. For the most part, there is a few exceptions. Like, for example, the benefit of the Lords of Hell is just you get to recruit one additional lesser minion for free, right? So they
which
just
does
get
not
a bonus person.
doesn't allow you to go to 11. It just you don't have to pay souls for them.
Right, exactly. Yes, you're still capped at 10 because you're always capped at 10 because 10 is the cap and the cap is 10.
Hmm.
But effectively, you can start at 8 if you want. Most warbands will start at 7. You can pretty easily start at 8. So there you go. Okay. So then let's talk about so obviously a lot of the demons have cost. This is just the summary tables for all of them. I'll leave it on this page to say that when you start a campaign game or you're just doing your standard 100-point game, there is basically 6 different. By the way, you're gonna feel like that number repeats a lot in this game. That's not an accident.
No.
The There are 6 basic lesser demon types, all kind of fill a sort of specific role. They all have varying costs and stuff like that. So that's why that's what you chiefly recruit from in those. Greater demons represent things that are harder to get your hands on. You can recruit graders in a 200-point game, or you can eventually recruit greater demons as you gain experience in the campaign. You eventually gain the ability to recruit graders. Graders are just sort of more powerful versions of kind of the basic ones. That is to say, they're each unique and they have their own things going on, but they have more. they're more, I guess is
mm,
what I would say. They're big versions. And then the superior demons are the absolute tippy top of the sort of existing hierarchy. You have to go very deep into a campaign to recruit them because they are all very powerful forces in their own right. Like these represent sort of paragons of power in hell, and bringing in a superior demon into your fold, into your belief structure, is one, very impactful in the game, and two, represents in the narrative of the thing something pretty big because you've convinced one of these really powerful figures to join your cause, right? Derek says, what time period does this take place on the Earth realm? Like, what time period is it in Earth? The answer is, I know what the answer is, but I'm not going to tell you because it is a secret, and it may have something to do with something we might do at some point in the future. So there you go, if I caveated that enough.
mm.
But yes, there's your answer. Yeah.
It's maybe a little. I mean, there's not a specific answer in the fluff, but you can kind of get a general idea for like when that demon was caught and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Hopefully, just from the fluff, so that can hopefully at least give you a hint to some degree.
Yes. There are hints of when that happened, though not when it is now. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of the demon breakdown. Keep in mind, all these demons can also evolve. So your lesser demons actually have their own greater and superior forms, so they don't become sort of dead weight in your cabal or something over time. So if you've got a slaughter fiend, he can become a greater slaughter fiend and a superior slaughter fiend. So you can either level your existing demons or recruit new ones, or likely both. So
We stole that from the Pokemans. Yeah.
people like evolutions. That's what
Yeah,
that's what I learned.
Pokemans are super popular.
There you go. All right. So your leader, yeah, you got three types of leaders: a warrior, sort of the kind of all-arounder guy who's just good at combat; the schemer, who is not your fighter but is more of obviously the master manipulator; and then the zealot, which is the sort of frenzied, just fanatic of their particular faith, and they're all about the offense. Adam, what's your feeling? What do you tend to lean to on your leader type there?
I think for my demented, it's definitely I'm looking at a schemer, but for my earthbound, I'm looking generally at a more of a zealot.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Efren, yes, the answer to your question is if you have 3 total people, then you would need 30 d12s. Yes, max ever. So yes, that is correct because you
Yeah.
can never have more than 10. So the most you'd ever roll is 10. That's right. Yeah, I'm a zealot. I'm a zealot man myself. I really love the zealot. I love everything about him. He's relatively fast and just absolutely great. And I like going for the offense. Surprising that as an Iron Jaws player, I would back the thing that's just
Indeed.
like all in on offensive attacks. Yeah, sure.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, hit me, Brandon. Brandon said he has a Reddit question regarding the schemer. Sure, absolutely. Go ahead, hit me with that, and I'll keep moving, but I will answer your question once you drop it in there. Okay. I'll also use this to stick on here for a second to just explain the 3 stats. There are 3 stats, which are move, which is how far you move in inches. It's pretty straightforward. Life, which is how much life points you have until you die. If you take that much damage, you're slain. Pretty straightforward. And then your combat score. And we'll talk about combat and how that works in just a little while when we get to the combat section. But it is a relevant number that sets both your ability to attack and defend yourself and so on and so forth. So there you go. So Brandon S says, does Master Manipulator, does this count as a special ability that specifically allows a second activation, or is the intention to skip initiative for another Cabal member? Yeah, great question. So what? And I'll read the ability here. I don't know. Yeah, we'll move it up here just a little bit. I'm gonna make sure it's completely on screen. But yeah. So Master Manipulator says whenever the schemer activates, he may choose to remove 1 die from your set of activation dice when his turn is complete. If he does so, another demon within 12 inches may instead be activated and take their turn immediately. So that's the section that Brandon is referencing here. So the question is, does this allow you to break the rules on the normal, you cannot double activate someone? And the answer is no, because it's not in there that it allows you to break the rules, so you can't, right? Like, what it allows you to do is jump in the line, right? So you can the old Harry Belafonte trick, as we call it. You've got a demon, you really need to go. Your opponent's going to go next. Hey, I'll burn off my 1, right? Because you can use any die from your activation pool, and instead of you going next, haha, tricks, my guy goes next, right? And so because the leader himself can only activate once, you can only do this once, right? But then that's what happens. Now, the second part of his ability, which is in addition once per round, when an enemy demon would attack the schemer may choose to remove 1 end spent activation die. If he does so, he may move. So that is breaking the normal rules, because it's saying, you're not actually activating, like you're not taking a turn. It's just allowing you a bonus thing, right? You get to move. Effectively, he sneaks away from people, right? The attacker may still choose to attack any other target in range after this move is completed, right? So the key there being that that it doesn't, that again, you're still not activating the demon twice, because the leader doesn't get to attack again or do other things or choose a combat style. He just literally moves, right? It's burning an unspent activation die to do a specific thing. So there you go. Cool. Hope that answered your question, Brandon. Okay, cool. Great. Good question. I am putting together, by the way, an FAQ. We will get an FAQ up once I've sort of collected and aggregated and really thought about answers. Like I'm watching the Facebook groups and people who send questions or anything like that. I'm trying to collate all these together so that I can put stuff out where people need clarifications or anything like that. And I will clarify the schemer in there. Because that is a great question. Okay. Adam, you want to tell us about essences and relics? Because I think this is pretty important.
So yeah, so the idea basically is that, again, because we're looking at what would, I guess, traditionally be a low number of stats in many different types of miniature games. You've got move, you got life, you got combat, like that's it. But we wanted to keep that part simple-ish for the most part, because we do have a decent amount of special abilities, like the ones that come from your philosophy, or potentially the ones that might come from your particular type of actual like minion demon and things like that. But then we also wanted to have the ability for the player running the Cabal to be able to actually customize even a little bit more. So you've got essences and you've got relics. So an essence is basically from when an older soul sometimes gets captured, and it's a soul that's been rebooted a bunch of times and it's done a lot of things and it's got a lot of experiences, it will have to some degree special abilities. So an essence is something that you can get, and then you can put it onto any one of your particular members of your Cabal, but then it's stuck there. So it's basically you decide who gets it or whatever, and the leaders have their own kind of essences when you're building the leaders, and they also have their own kind of relics. But later on down the road, you can also have essences and relics and stuff like that. But essences stick. Once it's on a thing, it's on a thing.
Yeah, once they've integrated that essence into their own mishmash of souls that's in them, that's it. It's in the soup now. It's in the demon soup, and it ain't coming back out.
Exactly. Whereas relics can be traded in between games.
Right.
So even leader relics, like you can give a leader relic to some other person in your Cabal if you decided that you found this other thing that's going to synergize very well with your leader, and you're going to swap things out. And so and there's also a limit depending on the type of creature, depending on the class, whether you got a leader devout or a minion. I mean, like minions can just basically carry one relic and one essence. Pretty much everybody can just pretty much carry one relic. Although I think isn't there an ability to carry more than one?
There is a title that allows you to carry two if you earn it.
Yeah.
But you have to get you have to be a hoarder. Effectively, you got to get the relic and a bunch of essences, and then effectively you unlock the ability to carry a second relic around. Yes.
Yeah. But a leader can carry up to three essences. Yeah. And then the devout can do 2, and minions can do 1. So it gives you the ability to customize, and even to some degree customize in between games, because you can swap those relics around. Again, you can't swap around the essences, but you can swap around the relics. So I mean, it's nice to have that kind of customization in between the games, I think, or when you're playing in a campaign system.
Yep. So Brandon had some questions. Brandon, the Screaming Shield. Oh boy, never have I written a more controversial thing than the Screaming Shield. So I'm just going to flip the page here, Brandon, and answer your question by showing that the Screaming Shield's rules were clarified. Because in my mind, how other people read that were not the same things. Happens
That's
a
true.
lot.
Yep.
Multiple people read it. None of us caught it. It happens sometimes. But the Screaming Shield here is what it says. This demon may never be hit on anything lower than a 3+, parens. They may not be hit on 2, close parens. The essence of the Screaming Shield is pretty straightforward. If you're fighting a demon that has a higher combat score than you, which would normally allow them to hit on 2s, they must still hit on 3s.
Now, the way it was originally worded was you could never hit on better
than a 3.
Than a
yes,
3.
which in this context would be better than a 3 on a hit roll is a 2, right? But that's a confusing way to word that. I accept that now. That was a case of my brain working very differently than other people than the people who are readers. Great catch. We reworded. It's clear now in the PDF. Brandon S says, like, Soul Drinker says, if this demon attacks, slays an enemy demon, the leader heals 1 damage. Yes, so it's still them. They say, so like Soul Drinker saying, like leader on it or something, right? It doesn't matter. That's just because the leader took it initially. If they hand it to someone else, then insert demon name there, right? The demon who slayed would heal the life. So there you go. That's the answer to that one. Very good. Great question. Okay. So then all the different devouts are here. We're not going to tarry too long on them because we've talked quite a bit about them. But they all have unique roles. The fun of the devout, in my mind, is that they get to really play a special role. Most of them have some kind of score that they track that's sort of building throughout the game, triggering with something around their philosophy. So, for example, the Madness Demon, who is the demon of the Demented, he has he starts the battle with a disorder score of 0. Every time during the game, any combat roll includes triple 1s. It must be a triple, quadruples, etc. do not count. The disorder score increases by 1. The Madness Demon may add the disorder score to their combat ability when making combat defense rolls. So effectively, the more disordered everything becomes, as represented by these triple 1s, the harder it is to get rid of the Madness Demon, right? The more empowered they are.
That's sweet. Love that.
Yeah, I really liked playing on the triples thing in the Demented philosophy, which was a lot of fun because triples were just a neat, mathematically interesting chance to happen on all these rolls, right? And so it's actually interesting that there's several different things within the Demented that trigger on triples. So you're always looking for trips when you're playing the Demented.
Nice.
So there you go. David, I think I answered your question already because I went over the streaming shield, but in case I didn't, you can just say and I'll flip back and we can re-answer it. So yeah, that's kind of how that stuff works. And then the devouts, just like every other demon, do have an evolution as well, and on their experience table they will evolve and gain bonuses. So there you go. Okay, yeah, man, throw them in, Brandon. This is great. I like you got good questions here. So I'm happy to answer them. What is your Demented pick, Adam? Your Demented pick. I'm sorry. What's your devout pick? Too many words.
Well, I guess I wasn't going to say Madness Demon because I like the concept of the Earthbound, as I was talking about, from like a story aspect. The Succubus, though, like I've never come across like a for lack of a better term, traditional Succubus model that I've been like, yeah, that's like, so I'm looking for something right now that's going to use more of the suck part from the Succubus. Like there's going to be a lot of like, I don't know, tentacles or suckers or like a big proboscis for pulling, that kind of something like that. Like that's kind of what I'm looking for, as opposed to the curvy lady with the wings and all that kind of stuff, or whatever that you see from like, Reaper and places like that and whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what I'm looking for. So if I can find a model like that, then I'm down for, finishing out that group. But for right now, I think that the Madness Demon is interesting to me because I like, counting that madness and kind of working down that way. So yeah.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Adam here, but there's like some quotes from some of the devouts that happen on the sides of the page. And when we were going through designing these sidebars, right, I said, well, I came up with a couple of quotes, and we were some that was like, I don't know, whatever you want, and whatever we think. And he kind of we said, well, we want to do something for the Void Demon, but we don't know what it would be because he's like this blank void, right? He's this emptiness. So what would it
Yeah.
be? And I said, Adam said, oh, I don't know. I'll think about it and I'll write something. So I didn't have anything to do with this. He wrote this completely sight unseen. He brought it back to me, and it's or like brackets, sound of a corpse rotting as wind moves along jagged stones, and then the unspoken scream, devout of the empty. Holy crap, that's the best in the world. Like, I love that so much.
Well, thank
Adam,
you. Yeah.
I stared at that for many minutes editing this document and decided I'm not going to touch that.
Well, because everybody, the other ones had like a quote, like I said
Right.
this, and then it was attributed, and this guy wouldn't, the void demon isn't going to be like, well, you know what I think, like that's not a thing, I mean, so I that just kind of came to me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. A question about the succubus's too charming, where she can basically make another demon fall under her charms. So the question is basically, does it activate the demon? And the answer is no, because it doesn't say it activates the demon, right? It just says you choose an enemy. You may then you may move that demon up to its normal move ability and make a combat attack against any demon of your choice. So the answer is, it doesn't say like it activates the demon. The enemy doesn't have to use a die or anything like that. It just, she basically makes them kind of act out of turn, right? But it's not it is not activation, so it doesn't bump up against the you can only activate someone once in a round. That's why it's written with that very specific language of like, do X, do Y, but we didn't use the normal game term. Like, I didn't say she picks someone, they now activate, right? Because if I had said that, then a whole bunch of other choices would have cascaded around that. So, the point is that, so your follow-up question was, would they still gain the benefit of focused combat if they had went earlier in the round? Yes, because focused combat provides a bonus that lasts until that demon activates again, right? But they wouldn't have the benefit of running skirmish, because that benefits only that move, and they wouldn't have the benefit of charge, because that is only for the attack made at the end of the combat attack made at the end of your move. So it's actually a very clever play to pick a demon that is in focused combat, because then you're getting a little bonus score there, right? So yes.
And I had somebody ask me recently, like, if I'm not planning on going anywhere, but there's like, you're holding an objective, can I still just pick focused combat even though I have no plans to fight, but someone might charge up on me? And that's the answer is yes. Like, that's the idea.
Absolutely.
If you're not going anywhere, it's a good idea to just say, okay, like if you're just holding an objective, you want to do focused combat, because then if somebody does get to you, you can still get the benefit.
Yep, exactly. And then then also leading on from that, if not, do you get to activate a combat style to charge and get the +1 combat die? No, because again, they're not actually activating, hence you cannot, since they're not activating, they don't get to choose a combat style. She's effectively just, tapping into their brain, and they're kind of just walking over there and then punching their enemy in the face. They're not using their wits aren't about them at that moment, effectively, right? Okay, and then on the tally man, I hadn't gotten to the tally man yet. Sorry, am I just scrolling past him? Oh yeah, there he is. Tax. I scrolled right past him. Sorry. Okay, so the tally man. Let's see. What is he saying? Another question. Tax states you gain a soul. Is this a soul die or the currency? You gain 1 soul die. There. Where are you referencing here? Did I just... When the enemy spends a soul dice, you may roll a die on a 4+, you gain 1 soul dice. Immediately roll a dice and add it to your play sheet as though you had slain a demon. I don't see... Oh, there it is. Okay. If the result is less than equal to the current tax score, you gain an additional soul. Yeah, got it. Okay. So yes, it's an additional soul die. Sorry. Yeah, I guess I should have specified there. The idea being, I didn't specify it because it's saying you slain a demon, hence you're getting a soul die, right? And then you roll the die, and on top of that, you gain 1 additional. So it's referencing back to that thing.
Sure.
That's a good catch. I probably should have fully typed out, like I should have probably fully clarified. But yes, it was meaning you gain an additional soul die, since it's adding on top of the 1 you already gained for slaying the demon. Yeah, good question. Okay. Let's see. Oh, this is an interesting question. So, I don't know how to pronounce that. Satan, I guess, maybe? I don't know. I don't know if this sort of question is legal, but it's somewhat. Sure, it's legal, man. Free country. But as someone brand new to miniatures in general, what models were in your imagination in theme when you were making this minis agnostic game? I mean, I know what my answer is, but Adam, you wanna take that?
I mean, I got to be honest. It was a part of what made me want to also work on a game with demons was because I've really always loved the Games Workshop like Corn Bloodletters. I just
Mm.
never had any plans to actually play them in anything. Like I know you can play them like in Kill Team now. Like you couldn't initially; they weren't in the original release of the book, but they are in Kill Team Annual 2019 question mark I think. Um, and then I think you can play them as well in Warcry as well. So I could see myself going down that road at some point. But I love the concept of just having a couple of them, maybe. So that was part of it. Is I liked that concept. But then as I was starting to look, like we don't necessarily. This is not telling any stories out of school necessarily, but we did reach out to Games Workshop to say, hey, if we used some photos of your miniatures in our game, would that be a problem? And they were like, well, technically, legally, yes. And we're like, all right, that's cool. So, and that legally within what they look at it as being, whatever, that's their rules. And that's why we didn't put any GW models in, as images in the game. So because of that, I started looking at 3D printer stuff because I've got a good friend with a 3D printer. And, so I started looking at My Mini Factory and just typing in Demon, which is an awesome place to start. And I immediately found a bunch of really, really, really cool stuff. So, there are definitely avenues you can go if you want to go a little bit more, maybe kind of corpulent and poxy and nurgly. You can go again, like with a different cultures idea of what demons are. If you can find them, there's a game from several years ago from Cool Mini or Not called Wrath of Kings.
Oh yeah.
And there was a faction in that game called I can't think of the name of the faction, but they were very kind of like Oni looking, kind of like Asian. Like maybe House the Seer might be right. Anyway, like there's all kinds of options, things you can do, along those lines. But as far as like, I definitely was like, oh, I'm going to definitely make me some bloodletters. And then when I started seeing like a lot of the models and things like that we end up putting as artwork in the game, I was like, oh, these are pretty cool. I got to get this printed, and I got to get this printed, and so
Yeah, nice. It's wild how much that the 3D printing market has exploded.
I know.
That I've just started paying attention like over the last month in terrain and everything. And
oh yeah,
wow.
And just the amount of detail, like it's so amazing as a modeler to get a miniature that is built. Like it's cool and dynamic and stuff like that, but you don't have to put arms on it or nothing, like anything, and you don't have to fill gaps, and you don't have to scrape mold lines.
Yeah,
that is like I would be working on this model and be like, I would be looking for mold lines all the time, forgetting that this was never in a mold. This was yesterday. This was goop. You know what I mean? And now it's like so. It's really cool. And again, if you don't have a 3D printer, like I don't, well, I take it back. I have a 3D printer. I have not yet set it up and got it going yet. I just got it recently. But you may probably have a friend who does, and you might be like, hey, buy you a pizza or give you some money or whatever the deal is if you print these things for me. It's there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah. I've got these little guys. I used them as ghouls. This is a little 3D print of a ghoul. And I it's so funny. It hit me actually as I was putting 40 of these guys together for a huge unit of ghouls. I was just like, wow, this is so wonderful. I just take one of them and I glue it to the base, and he's done.
Yeah.
And that's it. I was like, this is so much easier. And like maybe some of the really big prints, you've got a couple pieces. Right.
Yeah. I've got one in the basement. Well, the one I'm working on Twitch right now was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe max, but he's probably 5 inches tall. I mean, and he's got a giant sword and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yep. It's really nice. That's what I'll say. Michael Newbank said, can a succubus move a demon with charming it without fighting to move it off an objective? Yeah, absolutely. Because you can fight any demon of your choice, and that could be none, right? So there you go. Like, none is part of that. So, yeah, absolutely. And that's a great trick, right? Getting them to walk away so that way you win the objective 100%. Succubus is potent, but she is also fragile, so you got to be careful with her. Let's see. Dennis said, "Is there a plan to have different levels of hell other than current factions?" Thinking Dante and the 12 Circles. Um, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know fully where the future of this game is going to go. We have some ideas. We've talked about it. I mean, Adam and I are going to continue designing games together. It was, as I mentioned earlier, it was a really fun partnership. So we're going to keep making stuff. We've learned a lot of lessons just from doing this the first time. I think we can do even better the next time and really, you know, make something really strong and fun and unique. We've been talking about ideas, but one of the things I'll say is, it would be highly unlikely that the next thing we do would be another Rain in Hell, right? Or Rain in Hell 2 Electric Boogaloo, right?
Yeah.
There's certainly concepts we have for expanding this, and maybe those will come about someday. But I think there's other concepts we also want to explore, other genres, other types of games, other settings, other themes. And it's such a wonderful wide world, and you can do so much cool stuff. And as 3D printers continue to grow and the number of people doing awesome 3D sculpts continues to grow, it just really expands what we can do, and know that there's still miniatures you can get out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe one day the robot squirrel game will become a reality, you know?
Well, I don't know. It's a pretty swamped market, honestly. Yeah, no, it's a situation where it was, because it's kind of an indie game and it's a DIY game, the concept behind those games very frequently is that there's not usually a lot of expansions. Like the constant ever expanding sort of game system sort of thing is really more of a, and I don't want to sound like a punk rock guy who's against the man, but it's more of a corporate thing. Like the concept is that we have to keep cranking this stuff out because every time we sell more books, we make more money, and it's just easier to kind of keep cranking these things out and adding on and adding on. And then, for lack of a better term, then you're trying to play 40K, but you have to have 5 books to do it, that kind of stuff. And but the thing is that because they're the biggest out there and all that kind of stuff, they to some degree have trained people, because we had people literally on day one going, "So what's the first expansion?" And we're like, that's not like, you know what I mean? Like we're no. And that's, yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So like we do have where we do want to, there is going to be an expansion to some degree, but it's going to be a free PDF. And we're looking at making a kind of a solo game for it as well, or solo, like an add-on. You won't be able to play the normal game solo, particularly because there's so much different kind of strategery and thought that has to go into how a warband works, that there's no way to make a simple AI to make it work. But like if you look at the scenario for the beast, there's an AI for that creature. So the concept is that we will have a certain number of scenarios that will be in this new kind of update eventually that will be just for solo play. So you won't be able to take like a solo play rules and play the third scenario. You'll be only able to just play those scenarios, but then at least there will also be solo play involved. So
yeah, and integrated into like a campaign type system. I actually just like Adam and I have been talking about it since for actually we started talking about it even before the game launched. But
it was one of those kind of
sketching out some ideas.
It was one of those minimum viable product sort of situations where, like, when you're looking at the ideas, all the possible ideas for any kind of product, you have to draw a line and say, if we have to, because if you try to do everything you want to do, the thing will never release. So you have to make a cutoff and go, this will come later, and this will be part of the minimum viable product. Yeah.
Yep. Stardog says, how much religious history went into making this game, or is it all creative imagination based? Very little, because it's not really aligned to any particular religion. Now, I love religious history. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do with that, but I think Adam and I are both of a mind that I don't really like to get tangled in real world stuff where I can imagine real people dying and stuff like, that was somebody's mother or father or son or, granddad or something like that. Like I tend to like to stay away from that kind of stuff. Like I'm not a historical person and things like that. So we very much wanted to make this more just, it's the imagination.
The idea behind it is that, again, like these are demons in a different dimension, and by demons that's just the term that we've given them. I don't know that they necessarily refer to each other as demons, and they don't necessarily call the place that they live hell, but through their interaction coming through this portal, be able to pop into different places all over Earth and kind of drag people back and whatnot. And maybe somebody like lived through it, like got back before they were pulled in, or they, and these stories are what then inspires the things that pop up in folk tales, things that pop up in religions in different cultures the world over. And because of all of this getting worked into it, like I said, the people that kind of, I don't want to say run the world, I'm not talking about like some sort of Illuminati or anything, but the people who kind of are, at the top echelons of things are like, they keep hearing these stories about this going on, and they know that something is going on out there. And to maybe convince people to be wary of this, you work that into, maybe potentially your religion or something like that, and whatever. And so, yeah, but these are, there's no Satan, there's no Lucifer, there's no like, people immediately also ask, we're like, well, when's the expansion for angels? And we're like, it's not that thing. So
right. I do find it ironic that we ended up accidentally releasing on the same day as the new season of Lucifer. So that's pretty great.
I've never watched that. I've seen trailers.
It's a really
Is that a good show? I've always
really
been curious.
Like it starts slow,
right,
but it's very fun. They're a little too cop premisey. Like Lucifer helps solve crimes and stuff. That's still the overwhelming premise. But it gets a lot better once you get into all the oddities of the, heaven and hell and the Silver City and his job and stuff like that. It focuses a lot more on the characters. I love the show. Totally hooked. Anyways, and also Smallville Superman shows up at one point, who's fun. Tom Wellington.
Like he shows up as Superman, or he
no.
Oh, okay, that'd be weird.
No, who he is a reveal in the season. He actually is a figure of note, but I won't spoil it just in case somebody's actually like. I would just imagine somebody's just watching through season 3 and they're like 2 episodes away from the reveal, and then I spoil it, and they're like, "Oh, come on! What are the chances?" Right.
Side note: Kathy needs to torture you with Mayor of Easttown, an extraordinary drama.
No, refuse.
Yes.
Watched one
Kathy,
episode, fell
make it
asleep.
happen.
I was like, "Get this off of my television." Boring. Nope.
Incredible.
Nope.
All right.
Hard nope. I'm sure it's a fantastic show. I'm sure it is. It had all the makings of one of those like fantastic dramas that I have zero interest in, negative interest in. I need dragons or explosions or something in my show.
It goes on your sociopathy checklist. And there's a number of items there. Yeah.
Correct. Like,
by the way, incidentally, I understand why a number of these shows Tom is so quiet, because he needs to be. Otherwise, they're going to be 6-hour shows. So if anybody just says that I'm the co-host that says yeah a lot, well, there's a reason, folks.
Well, especially if I'm here too. I mean, really.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. So, movement and combat. Tyler, thank you very much for giving us the sign that we should continue moving. But at any rate, there's pretty basic stuff. Like movement is pretty straightforward. As we said, you move in inches. Fly does what you would think it does. It flies, and you can move over models, and you can move over terrain and stuff like that. Climbing, you can move vertically. You just move at half speed. It's pretty straightforward. You can ignore terrain that's no higher than an inch or an inch wide. When you're moving, you just kind of, you can imagine your demon just going, ha-ha, and, getting over the top of it or whatever, right?
They have to make that noise, though.
They must. You must, when you move the demon, you must go, ha-ha!
Yeah.
Right? That represents the jump. Okay, let's see. And then that brings us to combat. Brandon had a question here on the armor demon. A demon may never use an ability when they are not activated unless a special ability specifically allows them to do so. Yep. Do abilities interacting with defense die, such as the armor demon, allow them to use an ability? Was the intention that you can get caught before the activation? No. So yes, with the armor demon, that would be like exactly the special ability that's specifically allowing them to do so, because it says when X happens, namely they make a combat defense roll, right? You may do Y. So it's created an exception trigger to that, right? So then in situation X, they can do Y. So yes, you can't get caught before it. When they make a combat defense roll, they can simply do the thing every time. Yep. Good question. That was really, that blanket rule is there to make sure that like people aren't trying to do something like charm people when it's not their turn or whatever, right? Go ahead, Tom.
Right. On the climbing, I was just say your little sentence, you must end your movement on a horizontal surface the model will balance on.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you guys bit the bullet and added that in, because that's been endless source of frustration in AOS over the last 5 years.
Yeah. If it sits, it fits. That's my easy rule, right? Like it's just can I take the model and set it in this place and have it stand there, right? If this is what's happening, then no, the model doesn't go there, right? It's that easy.
Yeah.
I really think that cleans up so much, because then you don't have to be like, well, wait, this model was how far up the wall, and
Right.
right,
Yeah. I mean, it's a situation of like, I mean, and what it's simulating is the fact that you can clamber up a short surface, but it's real hard to clamber up a long, tall surface. You know what I mean? Because you're going
Yeah.
to get tired on the way up, at the very least, whatever, you had a long slog because you're a demon and you don't have a car, or whatever. But
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
so yeah,
Real downside.
yeah.
They're still working on the car technology down there. All right. So let's talk about combat. Combat's pretty straightforward. So we've mentioned the combat score before.
Mhm.
Every demon has a combat score. It is a number. And effectively, when you activate, you choose one of 3 combat styles: skirmish, charge, or focused combat. We've mentioned them already a couple times. They have certain ways that they modify what you do and how you fight or how you move. Pretty simple. We don't have to worry about that at the moment. We won't go too deep. Just they do kind of what you would imagine them to do, right? Like, pretty straightforward. The way your combat score works is this: you start by taking your combat score and comparing it to your enemies. If I'm a 6 and you're a 5, I'm greater than your number, hence my target number becomes 2. If it's equal to, it's on 3s. If it's less than, it's on 4s. So effectively, if you're familiar with the sort of comparative metrics, oftentimes in D6 games, these end up being 3, 4, 5. Right? So that's like the traditional 40k split. Now, the reason we didn't use that is because I wanted this game to be about fast, brutal combat. Right?
Mhm.
And by scooting all of those numbers down 1, you actually greatly shift the favor. You shift it in favor of offense.
Yep.
Like mathematically, it makes a huge difference. And certain things can obviously move your combat number around. So, for example, if you charge, your combat score increases by 1 for your attacks made at the end of that movement. So if you were combat 6 and you charged, you're now combat 7 for both the comparative and the number of dice you roll. So very potent. That kind of thing. Certain demons interact with things like charging, right? So, for example, the spiky demon, he gets to reroll some number of dice on the charge, which is great. Makes him a great charger. Makes him not as good if he's just sitting there stuck in. Right? He really wants to be on the charge. Whereas an armor demon is happy to sit there and just like attrition fight and slog it out, right? So on and so forth. After the combat attack roll, you're going to, like, if you need 2s, okay, you're going to roll 6 dice. Everything that's a 2 is a potential point of damage. The opponent then makes a combat defense roll. They roll whatever their combat is. So if their combat is 5, as I said in the scenario, they roll 5 dice. Every 6 reduces the damage dealt by 1. So then that's your math. That's it. So if I rolled 6 dice to attack, got 5 successes, you rolled 5 defense dice and got lucky and got 2 6s, I did 3 damage. There it is.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's it's simple, but it's still like, it can still be sometimes a little swingy, so that there's potential for a benefit, which you like. I like it, at least. I know that very frequently people are like, no, I don't want any swinginess. I don't want any randomness. I'm like, but it's a game and we're supposed to have fun. So there's times like you tell the stories down the road about that time that all you needed to do was just not roll 3 1s. And then you rolled 3. Like I just told the story recently, like last weekend. I was playing a guy, I think we were playing 40K, and I don't even remember what the circumstances was, but all my opponent had to do was not roll 3 1s. And then he rolled 3 1s, and he picked up his dice, and he walked out the front of the game shop, and we were just across the street from the river, and he just walked across the street, and he threw his dice in the river. So that's become now, like, amongst that game shop and the people that were kind of there and stuff like that, like anytime you roll like some bad dice, you're just like, and the game shop's moved. It's nowhere near the river anymore, but I'm like, those dice are going to the river. You know what I mean? And it's just, so yeah, like that kind of aspect to it is, I think, the interesting part. And again, to your point, Vince, as well, the whole concept of like, because when you were originally like, oh yeah, it'll be like, if you're beating him, it's on 2s. And if you're this, it's 3s and that's 4s. And I'm like, that sounds a lot more dangerous than like what you expect with 40K.
Sure.
But like, how many times have you been playing a game like 40K and you've just got like some guardsmen and some Tau over in the corner and they're just having a slap fight, you know? I
Right,
mean, and it
right,
goes on
right.
for like
Yeah.
5 rounds. Yeah, you want this like part of the original design document, and this is why it's super important. If you're going to design a game, you have to sit down and put down like bullet points, like this is the guiding light. Everything you do has to fit this. And one
Yeah.
of them was fast but brutal, which means it's a speedy game and also stuff dies.
I meant to circle back earlier. Yeah, I was curious what was on that initial list of guiding principles. So that was one. Do you guys remember
Yeah.
what the others were?
Like the low number, you know, I think originally we were saying 5 to 10 miniatures, but
Yep.
then kind of the math worked out to be closer to 7 to 10 miniatures. Fast, brutal combat. Do I have the document open? No, David, I have it open on my computer downstairs. I actually, because it's like, honestly, the original like initial design document has been open on my computer downstairs for months and months and months.
Yeah, right on.
But yeah, there was like a bunch of things like
Had to
that.
include
You know?
like a campaign style play,
Yep.
right? Had to
Yeah.
facilitate campaign play,
Yeah.
right? So that
Yeah.
was like, which is important. You don't just want to bolt that whole thing on, right? You want
Right,
to make sure the
no.
game is designed from the beginning to be able to facilitate that.
I got to be honest. I feel like the campaign in Kings or Kill Team, I feel like that's almost a little bolted on.
Right, and it's a
A
good
little-
example of when it wasn't designed with that fit to purpose, right? We
Yeah.
started from the principle what we're writing needs to work in a campaign, right? So there has to be room to grow and
Yeah.
ways to advance and stuff like that. Hence, thinking about things like the evolution of demons, right? If
Mhm.
we weren't thinking about campaign play, why would we ever bother to write in rules to evolve your demons?
Right. If this was
Right.
a competitive game where you were just constantly playing like one-offs, then the evolution thing wouldn't make any sense. Yeah, absolutely.
You really felt that reading the document, that the campaign part, when I got to that part, like, wow, there's more depth here than I would necessarily have expected
Mhm.
for an initial launch. Yeah, that really stood out.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah.
The other important mechanic that we just hit upon that's good to talk about is soul dice. As we mentioned, souls are the fuel of hell, the currency, the food, the everything. They are the part and parcel, the most important thing that everybody wants. And whenever a demon is slain by a demon you control, and one of your demons is within 3 inches of the slain demon, you may harvest soul energy from that slain demon. This is represented in the game by a soul dice. Each time you slay a demon, friend or foe, that is important. You can kill your own people, and there are reasons in the game to do so.
Mm-hmm.
You roll a d6 and place the result on your play sheet. So you literally, like, at that moment, you gain, okay, I got a soul dice, roll the d6, it came up with the face of a 4. There's a space on the play sheet where you put that with the 4 face up. And that's real important, because then that has effectively 3 uses. The first is you can, at any point in time, use the die and replace any roll made as part of a combat attack or defense roll for you or your enemy with the face value of that die. So, for example, your enemy is coming at you. They hit you for 3, they hit you for 2 damage, you only have 2 life left, you go, nope, and you take your 1 and you replace one of their successes with a 1. And you're like, nah, you missed, brother. Right? So you can throw souls at their rolls, which is real fun. The second thing you can do is you can burn off a soul dice to add its face value to the movement of one of your demons. Which is really, really, really important, especially in the late game, for getting around the board and claiming those objectives, things like that, you know, kind of doing that last minute stuff. Kind of, it leads to, like, as the game goes, the game very much has this, like, building tempo, right? Whereas it goes, it starts to roll and roll faster. Combat gets joined, more demons are dying, turns are faster because activation dice are getting sapped out, demons are being slain, right? The game speeds as it goes. And that was very much, there's a term for that in music, and I do not remember what it is, but allegro, maybe? Go faster? I don't know. Somebody who's a composer in the chat, tell me. Anyways, and so that is another one of those things that feeds into that. The third thing that you can do is save those soul dice, because if you're playing a campaign, those become the money that you use after the game to go buy stuff. So you're always in this balance, if you're playing in a campaign, between burning your resources in the game to win or keeping them after the game to get more stuff, basically. So.
Yeah, and I liked the idea of, you know, after playing a lot of Kill Team and was, to a lesser degree, Warcry, like I always felt like, because there were so many times when I would be playing and I would have, you know, command dice that I just maybe wouldn't use as much as I should. And there were times when I'm like, okay, maybe I even won. Like I got all the way through this game and won, and I still have like 4 command dice, and I'm like, I should be able to do something with that, and get some sort of benefit for being thrifty. I don't know. That doesn't seem like the right term, but whatever. And so yeah, so that was kind of I think a cool concept as well with the soul dice as well. I like that a lot. But I also like the not just like, oh, this becomes another roll, but when it happens, it becomes a roll, and now you're looking at it, and your opponent's looking at it, and they know
it's
they're
visible.
rushing.
Yeah. You're both like,
and they're looking at it, and you're looking, yeah. And they know you have a 1, so if they do something
Exactly.
cool, you can be
Yep.
like, nope, and so that's cool too.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. A just said, I like that. Allowing the use of the soul dice on your opponent's rolls means that rolling low isn't bad. No, exactly. Like, there's basically any face that comes up can have a use. Now, that might not be the use you want at that moment, but it can have a use, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly.
I appreciate a game that lets everybody have destiny dice, not just one faction.
There you go. Absolutely, after a fashion. Getting faster in music is called accelerando. I don't know if that's real, but if it is, that's an awesome term. I'm going to go ahead and say that works. I love it. Saitan said, what is the dice expectation? Or Satan, sorry, said, what is the dice expectation of the game? 1 set of dungeon dice and pack of 6 dice. So it mentioned at the beginning, but you effectively need 10 D12s and then about the same number of D6s. So about 10 D12s and 10 D6, and you're good to go per player. Terrain. I'll just wrap this up quick because we've talked about it a lot. There are different types of terrain. Ruins, shrines, swamps, forests, pools, and crags. Each of them has a functional rule. That is to say, because it is this thing, it acts like this, right? So, for example, a forest.
Is there swamps?
What's that?
Is there swamps?
Yeah, swamps. Yes.
Oh.
Yep.
I guess I forgot about that because I was thinking I'm thinking pools is like, but I didn't.
Pools are different kinds of liquid. Yeah, the swamp is a larger area of terrain space. Yeah, let's do a shrine, right? Okay, so because the shrine is a shrine, it has this rules like this is what it does. Demon can walk up to it, they can supplicate, so on and so forth, right? That's just because it's a functional thing in the world. But at the same time, all your terrain can also have optional rules. So, for example, the shrine could be empowered or it could be cursed. Your ruins could be haunted. That kind of stuff that you can choose to use that can make the terrain deadly dangerous for you to walk into. It can start playing a more active role in the game. But if you don't want to use any of that stuff because you're trying to keep it simple, like it's your first game and you're just learning and you've got a lot in your head, cool. Don't use it. No issue. That's why we wrote it in as optional. It lets you take that single piece of terrain, that single thing of ruins you've got, and use it in a lot of different ways, right? Because it can effectively be 3 different functional pieces of terrain. It's just getting more use out of less stuff, right? You don't need to have 50 different pieces of terrain. You can have the one thing, and it can do a lot of different roles in the game. So, so there you go. Pretty straightforward. And again, remember the golden rule. If it sits, it fits, right? I did mention the earlier situation, so I will mention this here. One of the things that was that came up in the Facebook group that I thought was interesting was someone showed a picture of like their Mephit demon sitting on a piece of Warcry terrain where they had this very high platform built on the Warcry terrain, and the high platform was very small, okay? But it was big enough to fit like just the Mephit, and it was so extended in the tower that there was no way for any other demon to get an objective range or an engagement range of it, and the Mephit had flown up there with an objective, right? And so the question was, well, what happens then, right? Because nobody can get up there and actually fight that guy. He just became immune to combat, right? And that seems pretty crappy. Now that is pretty rare because it's, I think, rare that you're going to have like that literal small of a space. I am going to write a more detailed FAQ explanation to that of like how you would deal with that sort of oddity of terrain. One of the challenges is that you have to sort of think about your terrain and how you're setting it up, because if you create spaces like that, you're going to empower flyers, right? Sort of just a general rule. The more verticality you pack on the board, even if it's got lots of spaces where other things can get up there and fight them, so it doesn't have to be the sort of bad scenario that I described, right? If you fill your board full of high, 6-inch tall terrain, then flyers are innately more powerful, right? Because they can just easily get up to those spaces and not be engaged, which, duh. Right? Like in that kind of environment, they are more powerful, right? So think about if that's what you want to do before you sort of choose the terrain you happen to set up on the board, right? But I'm going to write a little FAQ answer to kind of chart out different potential answers to this of like how you handle this, because I don't want any, like, that seems like a really bad play experience. So we'll solve that.
I mean, it's a bit of a situation of the fact that the game basically has no range combat, which
Right.
was part of the plan, like from the get. That's another part of
Oh yeah, I think there was
the
the
design
guiding principles
document.
was only melee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but yeah, you're right. It is a situation where if you can just get up on a high point and stay up there, you're like, hey, but yeah, you're right. It's important for you as you're kind of putting your terrain together to kind of maybe think about that. Like I've played games before where, one person's got a mostly flying army and the other person doesn't. And then the board gets built to have a lot of high areas and like the objectives are up high and all these issues. And you're like, all right, well now one side's got obviously an advantage. And so it's the responsibility to some degree of the two players to be like, let's try to make this at least a little bit more, fair in some fashions.
Yeah, right. And I mean the same thing's true in Warcry, right? Like if you play on an all flat board with no verticality and you play the Corvus Cabal or whatever, you're like, oh good, I just don't get to use any of my special abilities like as
exactly.
This game, right?
Exactly.
Whereas if you're playing if you're playing with a lot of verticality and you play the Nighthaunt Warband, you're like, whoa, it is game on, folks. You all are in big trouble.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of one of those oddities because terrain can have an infinite number of permutations, right? That can happen. So
yeah. Did you guys have any consideration? I'm reminded of the conversation events that you had with Rob about terrain keywords, which of course 40K has incorporated. So, maybe a terrain with verticality of a certain size you could make impassable. Was there any consideration to something like that?
Yeah, I thought about it, and it just felt overly complicated for what we were going for here, right? Like, because we wanted to keep it more simple and directly functional. The idea of them sort of jacking in a whole keyword system felt like overkill, right? Now that being said, I think it's valuable. Right?
The whole concept of impassable in this situation is basically brought about by the actual terrain itself. Like if you can't find, like if it's so bumpy that you can't ever set anybody on it, particularly then it's impassable because you can't land.
Right.
Yeah. But in that situation, still, if you had the distance, you could fly over it. So I guess it's not impassable. It's just, it's impassable for most, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I've always thought it was kind of odd to be like, unless it's like a scenario where you're fighting in the Mines of Moria and they have those giant columns going all the way up to the ceiling. The concept of like, this goes all the way up to the sky. And you're like, okay, cool. I guess that's what, it always seemed kind of like, I don't want to say a cop out, but it seemed like it's a easy way out a little bit for the scenario,
Yeah, makes sense.
And obviously there's a random terrain table to then kind of facilitate your tables if you want to use, but of course you can also just pick. That's just there if you want to go that direction. And then sort of lastly, we'll just talk, of course, there is a campaign system, as we've mentioned many times. There are 6 steps to the post-campaign play. First off, you figure out the effects of death. And so every demon that is slain, you have to roll on this little table for. These are all 2d12 tables, which I love 2d12 tables because they are fantastic mathematical odds. Like, it's so fun it's so it's just a great odds spread to work with to get to pack these numbers around. When you create ranges inside of a 2d12 spread, it's a really fun mathematical exercise. But the basic concept here is pretty straightforward. We wanted to offer some win for losing. There'll be a blog post coming out about this at some point in the future. Where I talk about sort of the sting of victory and the thrill of defeat. We wanted to incorporate some amount of winning for losing and losing when you win. And so, your demons can have both negative and positive effects from dying. I read somebody's battle report and they said one of their Mephits rolled evolution, the 24, dropped the 2 hot 12s. The Mephit got slain. And so Pop, after the first game, evolved into a greater Mephit, which is very funny. So I was like, that's the kind of stuff you want to see happen. That's pretty great. Once you've done that, you can choose to cull the weak, which is just if there's somebody in your warband who you don't like anymore or has gotten too injured or has become kind of useless, you can just cut them from the roster and you get a refund back of 50% of their soul value. Then you get to roll on the reward table to see what you got. And so there's different kinds of rewards you can get, both relics and essences. This is a series of sort of 3 charts based on what you're rolling on. You can also roll additional times, sometimes based on the particular scenario. Titles, this is where you can get the title, as we mentioned. So these are your achievements. And these are a lot more of like winning for losing. So for example, like unstable steps, if you die to terrain, then you can get the title called Unstable Steps, and you'd be like, whatever of the unstable steps, and you get to roll twice when making a check for any terrain and select either result, right? You can also do things like Usurper, where your non-leader kills your leader and then takes control of the cabal, so that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I love these. These are brilliant.
I'm really excited about them. I think the titles are really fun. Like I said, we're going to put out a title tracker sheet here sometime soon, and
Nice.
and so I really love this idea, and this was very much Adam, coming up with this idea, and then just both of us just running just hog wild with it to see what we could do.
Yeah.
The pacifist. I like that one.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah.
And it was a situation as well, just like initially I was just like, oh, it'd be cool to have like these different names. But then I thought about it again, like I said, kind of like from like your Xbox achievements and stuff like that. And my thought was like there are plenty of people out there that love to chase that stuff. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. But like, does it do anything for you in the game? And they're like, well, no, but then you get it. And I'm like, for years, I was like, well, there should be some sort of benefit somehow other than just you have it on your thing. And there doesn't seem to be one, which is fine. But I was like, if we make a benefit to this where you get this title, which also gives you a special thing, it's cool. And it's also something you can choose not to take too. Like if you did this thing that would trigger that for you. Someone actually, I saw that either on Facebook today or else I saw it over on Reddit at one point today. But someone was like, but do I have to? And then it says, well, here it says may. So that means you don't have to.
Correct. You don't. You may decline the title.
But then you can't take it again.
You cannot
later.
take it again in the future. You have declined that title. Like
right.
If somebody offers to make you an Earl and you turn it down, you're never going to be an Earl again. You got to go for a Duke or something instead.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, Brandon. The answer is, so Brandon had a question on the beast scenario, which is, does each roll of a 6 count toward the 10, or do you need 10 distinct attacks where at least 1 6 was rolled? The second one, you need at least 10 distinct attacks where 1 6 was rolled. That is how you take control of the beast. So he is hard to handle. Hey, little thing, let me light your candle, because, mama, he's hard to handle now. Yes, indeed. All right. And then, obviously, you gain experience, and that can do that. And then your last step is recruitment and expeditions. So you can choose to recruit demons. And you can also choose to go on expeditions, which can then benefit your chance to gain more relics and essences and stuff like that. You can
so you're basically
funding.
Yeah, and you're basically selling or spending souls to then maybe get something, or get a better chance of something, or get something quicker than later, and that kind of stuff. And I like that concept quite a bit too.
Exactly. It's another use for those souls that you're accruing, like, because we wanted to make sure that, okay, well, you're eventually going to hit 10, right? Like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
If you play long enough, you're going to hit
10 models. Yeah,
you're going to hit 10 models. So like, okay, now what am I doing with all these souls? Well, so the answer was we wanted to put in the expedition, so that way, because not only was it an interesting sort of risk reward mechanic to let you go get the potential to do new stuff, but also maybe lose something. Like gambling mechanics like that are generally fun, but also it then constantly gave you a way to continue to grow, right? Okay. And then lastly, yes, is all the scenarios. There are 10 scenarios in the book. I'm not going to go through all of them. You can see that we list the number of players. Most of the scenarios, so 7 out of 10, are what I would call multiplayer, meaning like more than 2. They're 2 to 4. The beast is actually 1 to 4. You can attempt to solo the beast. It is hard. I would not recommend, like, if you're going to roll your starting warband out and try to solo the beast with your first 7 guys, you might happen. You might do it, but he is in fact a beast. So that is to not be done lightly. Hey, Brandon, absolutely, more than happy to, buddy. So happy to answer all these questions. But yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. The rest of this is the various scenarios. Real quick, I just want to remind everybody, do hit like. I'm sure, as I said at the top of the show, there's going to be a few more people than normal that hit dislike or hit their little thumbs down because because we're talking about something different, and that's fine. I get it. Maybe they wanted us to talk about AOS. Don't worry, we will be back to AOS and Warhammer stuff next week. But if you're watching right now and you like Rain in Hell, or you just like us, hit like. We appreciate it, and it's really nice, and it helps other people find the show. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tyler.
Next week, you're just doing a big old talk about crab nose?
Correct. It's all crab nose all the time next week. Yes, it's the crab nose deep dive. Yes, that's right. He's releasing this weekend, so we had to schedule it up for crab nose, right? I mean, that's what it is. So, yeah.
Oh, congrats, guys. Yeah, it's really been fascinating kind of just listening in to more of the details. I mean, I knew a fair amount about it, but yeah, getting a much better feel, and hopefully everybody else is for this game. I mean, there's a ton of depth to it. And I hadn't personally had a lot of interest in skirmish games previously, but definitely tickled my fancy. I'm going to try to get our local group into it and start getting some games in.
Yeah, I think that the skirmish games, and GW has discovered this over the last several years. Obviously, you've noticed as well. But the skirmish games can be a great entrance vector for new players because, back, in ninth edition, or not ninth edition, 8th edition, like Warhammer Fantasy, which at the time was maybe around 7th edition or 6th edition, I think, of 40K. Those were like the two big main ways to get into kind of that, the 40K style of wargaming, or the Games Workshop style of wargaming. And so you either had to build like a big fantasy army or a big 40K army. And sure, you could play like Combat Patrol and things like that and whatever, but it's generally what you found. And that's why now when you're looking at Kill Team, you're looking at Warcry, you're looking at Warhammer Underworlds, all of these things are things that allow you to get in with a lot less models and a lot less book and a lot less of all that stuff. Yeah. But then they can also be kind of used like, you build a Warcry group, of this, and you're like, well, that's pretty cool. I built a bunch of Night Haunts for my Warcry. That's kind of cool. Well, if I add a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that, I got myself a Age of Sigmar army. And so it's, it's the kind of the way it works. So because of that, skirmish is popular. We're not trying to like get you to build up until you have a new game that's an army game. We're just like, we like these I like specifically like these small games because it allows me to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, play small games. And it's not something you're devoting like all of your hobby time to. You're able to switch around between different kind of games a little bit more easily. And some people just are like, nope, this is my game. This is my lane that I stick in, and that's great. But there's also people out there like me that are just like, I like to be able to kind of hop around and play this for a while till we get bored with it and then play something else,
Yep.
Yeah, 100%.
Brandon, I believe Wrath of Kings had a whole crab people faction. Maybe that's what Kingdoms of Corellon was. I don't know, but I know Wrath of Kings had.
Wrath of Kings had House Hadros, and they were aquatic. There was definitely some crab folks, or there were people that were like maybe looked like a jellyfish, but also had like a pinchy crab, and so yeah, there was. I don't know that there was anyone. There was definitely like a giant octopus that was pretty cool too. Yeah, I liked House Hadros when I was into that.
Absolutely. There you go. That's... All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated, buddy. Like I said, we're going to look for more. My honest hope with this is that people really enjoy the game. Maybe you get a chance to maybe if you haven't been playing skirmish games, like you mentioned, Tyler, that some people find that, try out skirmish games, and maybe even look at the other stuff on Wargames Vault. There's so many great indie games out there right now. Like it's really a golden age of all these games. There's amazing authors just writing incredibly fun, cool, unique games, solo, co-op, standard competitive, all sorts of really wonderful stuff. Adam mentioned a bunch of them earlier in the show. I will link them all down below so you can also see those. And I just think that I hope there's a chance for people to explore something that maybe they haven't before, to have fun with their friends, especially as we're all hopefully starting to come out of this long year. Great way to get back together.
Yeah, 100%.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, very good. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you watching. Very much enjoyed going over this. Tyler, thanks again, brother.
Yeah, buddy. Happy to be here. Yeah. Adam's great to talk with you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Before I was just probably a nameless face in the crowd. Can't remember me. But no, man, it's nice to sit down and chat with you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kego Fort, we'll see. That's what I'll say. And with that, I will say thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you didn't already. Subscribe. Don't forget we will be back next week covering. I can't even say his real name now. Covering. I was going to say Crap No Skin because it's so stuck in there.
Yeah.
Yes, covering the new Broken Realms book. I'll keep it simple like that. We really appreciate all of you, everyone who's interested in the game, who shared the game, who's playing the game. So thank you so much. Share it with your friends. Tell other people about it. We will be, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we will be sharing it on socials when the book goes back up for order once it's passed through the approval process. So look forward to that coming very soon. Do tune into the website regularly for the blog. There's going to be lots of stuff going up there. As mentioned, yeah, hit like, subscribe. As always, we'll see you in hell. We'll see you next Wednesday.